The first thing Joan noticed was that someone had moved Frank's photograph. It had stood on the white dresser in her sunroom suite, beside the shallow blue dish where she dropped her earrings at night. Now it was on the floor in the hallway, leaning against a cardboard box marked Joan Winter. The second thing she noticed was Kendra's voice behind the closed French doors. No, the natural light is the whole point. Clients need to see what these fabrics actually do. Joan set down her overnight bag. Through the glass, she could see 3 sample chairs where her bed had been. Fabric books covered the dresser. Her green quilt was gone, the curtains were gone, and a brass lamp with a black shade stood in the corner, making the room look like an expensive hotel where no one was expected to sleep. Kendra opened the door with her phone tucked between her shoulder and ear. "I'll send pictures tomorrow," she said, then ended the call. "You're home early. Where's my bed?" Kendra glanced toward the back of the house. That glance frightened Joan, more than an argument would have. The narrow den beside the laundry room had once held Daniel's exercise bike, a broken printer, and 6 cases of diet soda bought on sale. Now Joan's bed was pushed against one wall beneath a window that looked directly at the garbage bins. Her clothes hung from a portable rack. Frank's photograph sat on top of the printer. Someone had folded her nightgown into a perfect square and placed it on the pillow. Joan stood in the doorway without going in. "We were going to have everything finished before you got back," Kendra said. "That rack is temporary. Daniel's picking up a wardrobe. You moved my bedroom. We adjusted the rooms. You moved my bedroom while I was away." Kendra pressed her lips together, as if Joan were repeating a restaurant complaint after the manager had already offered free dessert. At 41, she was a handsome woman with heavy dark hair, long arms, and the upright posture of someone who believed chairs were mostly decorative. She wore paint-spattered jeans and one of Daniel's old college sweatshirts. There was a streak of cream paint along her jaw. The sunroom was sitting empty all day, she said. "I have clients coming Wednesday. Actual clients, Joan. I can't keep meeting people at coffee shops with wallpaper samples spread between the sugar packets." It wasn't empty. "I slept there. You know what I mean?" Joan did. That was the trouble. A delivery truck rumbled past the side of the house, making the window shake. The little room smelled of detergent and warm dust. Her upholstered sewing chair had been wedged between the bed and the exercise bike, leaving no room to sit unless she turned sideways. On its seat was a grocery bag full of her shoes. "Where's Frank's cedar chest?" "In storage," Kendra said. "What storage? The place on Weller? It was too big for this room." Joan turned. "You put my husband's chest in a storage unit? It's climate controlled." That detail was so thoroughly Kendra that Joan almost laughed. Climate control offered as tenderness. Daniel came in through the garage carrying a flat cardboard box under one arm. He stopped when he saw his mother. For half a second his face was unguarded, and Joan saw that he had expected more time. "Mom? Hey, is that my wardrobe?" He looked down at the box as if he had picked it up by mistake. "It's a good one, not that pressboard junk. This has a metal frame." Joan waited for him to say something about the sunroom. He scratched the side of his nose, a habit he had inherited from Frank, then set the box against the wall. "We should have called," he said. Kendra crossed her arms. "We were trying to get it done for her." "Done to me," Joan said. Daniel winced. Kendra did not. He was 44 and already softening around the middle, though he still wore the same size work shirts he had bought 5 years ago. The Buttons objected quietly. He had Frank's gray eyes, and none of Frank's talent for making a bad decision sound charming. "It's not permanent," he said. "We're trying something." "How long?" "Let's see how her client meeting goes." "Wednesday," Kendra said. "The meeting is Wednesday." Joan looked past them toward the suite. When she moved in 11 months ago, she and Daniel had spent 3 evenings choosing paint. She had wanted yellow. He had said yellow could turn sour in northern light, which sounded like something Kendra had told him. They settled on pale green. Frank had called the color hospital pudding when Joan once suggested it for their old kitchen. Now, the walls were white. She had put $65,000 into the renovation after selling the house on Beach Street. The bathroom alone had cost more than her first new car. Daniel had argued for heated floors because, he said, "You'll thank me every January." Joan had thanked him the first cold morning, standing barefoot on warm tile while the rest of the house creaked in the wind. The back den had no bathroom. It had a laundry sink with a paintbrush soaking in it. Kendra's phone buzzed. She checked the screen. "Are you expecting me to sleep in there tonight?" Joan asked. "Well, yes," Kendra said. Your bed is made. Daniel shot his wife a look. What? Kendra said. It is. Joan picked up Frank's photograph from the printer. It was the one taken at Daniel and Kendra's wedding. Frank in a navy suit, he complained, made him look like a bank robber. He had been laughing at something outside the frame. Joan rubbed a smudge from the glass with her thumb. We made your favorite chicken, Daniel said. Nobody had made Joan's favorite chicken. Kendra had bought a rotisserie chicken, and Daniel had reheated macaroni and cheese from the deli counter. Joan knew because the plastic containers were still in the recycling, their price stickers facing up. She had taught Daniel to cook. He could make pot roast, biscuits, and a respectable peach cobbler when he chose to. He simply became helpless in the presence of a woman already doing the work. At dinner, Kendra talked about sightlines. The suite has the right entrance, she said. Clients can come through the side gate and never enter our private living area. Joan moved a piece of chicken skin to the edge of her plate. I thought the suite was my private living area. It still can be after business hours. So I move back and forth every day? No, that would be disruptive. To the clients, to everyone. Daniel drank water and stared into his glass. Joan said, How long have you two been planning this? It came together fast, he said. Thursday, Kendra said at the same time. Joan had left Thursday morning to visit her sister Elaine in Madison. Kendra had carried her bag to the car. She had even tucked a package of almonds into the side pocket, because Joan sometimes forgot to eat on the highway. She pictured the two of them standing in the driveway, waving until she turned the corner, then coming inside and taking apart her room. I could have helped, Joan said. Kendra's expression softened with relief, misunderstanding her. I knew you would, once you saw how much sense it makes. I meant I could have helped move my own things. I could have decided what went into storage. The softness vanished. Daniel put his fork down. Mom, nobody's trying to hurt you. That's a low bar. The refrigerator hummed. Somewhere in the wall, a pipe knocked twice. Kendra leaned back. I know this is emotional because of Frank. Don't. I'm not being insensitive. I'm saying changes feel bigger after a loss. Joan felt the odd calm that sometimes arrived just before anger, cold and clean as lake water. My husband dying was a loss. You putting my underwear in a room with an exercise bike was a decision. Daniel closed his eyes. Kendra stood and carried her plate to the sink, though she had eaten barely half her dinner. I have been trying to build something in this house. I am not sitting around picking paint colors for fun. No one said you were. You didn't have to. Joan looked at Daniel. Did you agree to this? He rubbed his nose again. I agreed we needed to make better use of the space. There it was, not Kendra's decision imposed on a reluctant son. A sentence with we in it. Joan rose, wrapped the remaining chicken in foil, and put it in the refrigerator. Habit moved her hands even when the rest of her felt detached. She wiped a spot of cheese from the counter. Then she caught herself, folded the dishcloth once, and set it down. I'm tired, she said. Kendra exhaled as though the meeting had been adjourned. The dryer gets loud on the spin cycle. I'll make sure not to run it at night. That's thoughtful. In the back room, Joan changed into her nightgown with the shade lowered. The portable clothes rack rocked whenever she pulled a hanger. She found her toothbrush in a bathroom caddy beneath the bed. On the nightstand, one of Daniel's old TV trays, Kendra had placed a glass of water and a lavender candle. Joan carried the candle to the laundry sink and left it there. At 10:30, Daniel knocked. You decent? Yes. He opened the door only wide enough to put his head through. You need anything? My chest back. I meant tonight. That's what I need tonight. He entered and sat on the sewing chair, his knees nearly touching the bed. Kendra's under a lot of pressure. Joan waited. She finally has some momentum. These people Wednesday could refer her to a builder who does whole developments. I hope they do. You do? Of course. His shoulders loosened. I still want my room, she said. He looked toward the small window. One of the garbage bins had a crooked lid. Can we just get through Wednesday? Then what? We'll talk. We're talking now. Mom. The word carried a plea and a warning, the way it had when he was 16 and wanted her to stop asking where he had been. Joan touched Frank's photograph on the TV tray. Did you know she was moving the chest? I knew some stuff had to go into storage. Did you know she was moving my bed? He stood. I've got an early shift. Daniel, he paused at the door. You could have called me. I know. It was the nearest thing to an apology he offered. After he left, Joan lay down. The mattress sagged toward the wall because one caster had slipped off the frame. Every 11 minutes, the furnace started with a metallic bang. At midnight, Kendra ran the dishwasher. At 12:40, someone walked through the hallway and stopped outside Joan's door, but no one knocked. She did not sleep. Instead, she thought about the fishing cottage. It had been closed since the previous October, 5 weeks before Frank's final hospitalization. There would be leaves packed against the foundation and mousetraps that needed emptying. The propane might be low. The water should have been shut off, assuming Daniel had done what he promised. Joan had not spent a night there alone in 37 years. Frank used to say the cottage made sense to him because nothing pretended to be better than it was. A leaky roof leaked, a rotten board sagged, a fish was either on the line or it wasn't. At 3:15, Joan sat up and turned on the lamp. Her suitcase was still packed from Madison. She added 2 sweaters, her winter coat, medications, the bathroom caddy, and the foil-wrapped chicken. From the garage, she took Frank's green tackle box, which Kendra had wedged under the door to keep it from swinging shut. She found the cottage keys in the ceramic bowl beside the phone. In the kitchen, Joan wrote one sentence on the back of an envelope. "I've gone up to the lake, and I'll call when I'm settled." She placed it where her $800 household check usually sat on the first of the month. Then she picked up her bag, carried Frank's photograph under her arm, and left the back room exactly as they had made it. The Buick's headlights swept across the garage wall as Joan backed out. She expected a bedroom light to come on, then the porch light, then Daniel running into the driveway in his socks. Nothing happened. The house remained dark behind her, its windows blank except for the faint amber glow above the stove. She waited at the end of the driveway longer than necessary. Then she turned north. The roads were nearly empty. At that hour, the traffic lights seemed embarrassed to make anyone stop. Joan drove through 2 red lights with no other cars in sight. Frank's photograph lying face up on the passenger seat and the tackle box sliding in the footwell whenever she braked. She had driven this route dozens of times with Frank. He always stopped at a gas station outside Portage for coffee that tasted faintly of hot plastic. He claimed it was part of the tradition. Joan claimed bad coffee was not a tradition just because a person repeatedly refused to learn. At 6:20, she stopped there. The coffee had not improved. She was carrying it back to the car when her phone rang. Daniel's name lit the screen. Joan stood beside the gas pump, cold air moving under her coat, and watched it ring until it stopped. It rang again before she reached the driver's door. She answered. "Good morning. Where are you?" "I left a note." I read the note. "Where are you right now?" "At a gas station." "Which one?" "The one your father liked." There was a pause. "Mom, it's barely 6:30. I noticed. You can't just drive up there without telling anybody. I told you. A note isn't telling us. A note is what people leave when they don't want to have a conversation." Joan looked through the Buick's window at Frank's laughing face. "That seems to be how our family handles important things now." Daniel breathed out hard. She heard a door close on his end, then the hollow quiet of the garage. "Turn around," he said. "Come home, and we'll figure this out. Will my bed be back in the sunroom when I get there?" "It's not about the bed." "What is it about?" "Kendra has put a lot into getting ready for Wednesday." Joan took a sip of coffee and regretted it. "Then I shouldn't be in her way," she said. "Come on, don't do that." "Do what? Make it sound like we threw you out." "You didn't throw me out. You moved me into the room beside the washing machine. I've made my own arrangement. The cottage isn't ready. That's why I'm going to look at it. And if it's a disaster, then it will be a disaster I chose." A pickup pulled into the neighboring pump. The driver, a silver-haired man in a camouflage cap, nodded politely at Joan. She turned away, suddenly unwilling to have even a stranger witness the conversation. Daniel lowered his voice. "What am I supposed to tell Kendra?" Joan almost asked why Kendra's feelings had become his first practical concern. Instead, she said, "Tell her I took the tackle box." "What?" "The green one. It was holding the garage door." "Mom, nobody cares about the tackle box. I know." She ended the call before he could answer. For the next hour, her anger kept her warm. Then the sky brightened, and the certainty she'd carried out of the back room began to thin. Fields gave way to woods. The road narrowed and curved between stands of pine and bare-limbed maple. Joan passed the supper club, where Frank used to order prime rib, as if there were a prize for finishing it. Then, the weathered billboard advertising boat storage. The lake appeared once between the trees, gray as a sheet of steel, and vanished again. Her phone buzzed several times in the cup holder. She did not look until she reached the county road. 2 messages were from Daniel. "Please call me. At least let me come check the place first." The third was from Kendra. "I'm sorry you're upset. No one asked you to leave." Joan read it twice. The sentence was true in a way that made it feel dishonest. She set the phone face down. The cottage road was narrower than she remembered. Wet leaves covered the gravel, and low branches brushed the Buick's roof. Frank had always complained when Joan suggested trimming them. He said the branches gave the road character. Frank believed inconvenience and character were cousins. The cottage sat near the end of the road behind 2 white pines, brown shingles, green trim, a screened porch leaning almost imperceptibly toward the lake. The gutters were packed with leaves. One shutter hung crooked beside the bedroom window. Joan stopped the car but did not turn off the engine. In summer, the place had always seemed cheerfully worn. In the flat October light, it looked abandoned. Frank's aluminum fishing boat rested upside down on blocks. Tall weeds had grown around the fire ring. A blue tarp covered part of the woodshed and snapped in the wind. She could still turn around. She could call Daniel and say he had been right about the cottage without saying he had been right about anything else. She could spend a few nights at Elaine's while everyone cooled down. Elaine would be sympathetic for exactly 2 days, then begin suggesting apartments near Madison with organized activities and a shuttle to the grocery store. Joan shut off the engine. The key stuck in the front lock. She lifted the door by its handle, something Frank had done so automatically that she had forgotten the trick. It opened with a dry scrape. The air inside smelled of damp wood, cold ashes, and something animal. Oh, Frank. Her voice made the room feel emptier. The main space held a kitchen along one wall, a scarred pine table, and the stone fireplace Frank had been absurdly proud of. The old brown recliner faced the lake. One of its arms had split, exposing yellow foam. A fine layer of dust covered everything. Joan stepped farther in. Something moved beneath the sink. She froze. A small gray mouse shot along the baseboard and disappeared behind the refrigerator. "Well," Joan said, "at least someone's been enjoying the place." She opened windows even though the day was cold. In the bedroom, the mattress was covered with an old canvas drop cloth. Frank's red flannel shirt still hung from a nail behind the door. Joan touched the cuff, then pulled her hand away. The bathroom faucet coughed when she turned it. Nothing came out. Good, she thought. Daniel had shut off the water. Then she tried the kitchen faucet and got a violent burst of brown water that struck the sink and splashed her coat. Joan jumped back with a cry. The pipes groaned inside the wall. Water continued to spit from the faucet, rust-colored at first, then a weak cloudy stream. She stared at it. Daniel had not shut off the water. Someone had merely closed the valve beneath the bathroom sink, probably because that faucet dripped. Joan found paper towels beneath the counter. Mice had shredded half the roll into a nest. She used what remained to wipe her sleeve, laughing once in disbelief. The propane heater stood near the fireplace. Frank had taped instructions to the wall above it in his slanted block printing. Turn knob to pilot. Hold 30 seconds. Light. Don't get cute with it. Joan knelt and followed the steps. The pilot flame appeared, tiny and blue, then died as soon as she released the knob. She tried again. On the 3rd attempt, a loud knock came from the porch. Joan jerked upright and banged her shoulder against the heater. A woman stood outside the screen door holding a short-handled shovel. She was small and sturdy, with iron gray hair cut close to her head and a red plaid jacket zipped to her chin. "You Joan?" the woman called. "Yes." "Frank's Joan?" Joan opened the door. "That depends who's asking." The woman studied her, then smiled. "Good. You've got some pepper. I'm Rosa Alvarez, other side of the cove, Blue House. I saw the car." She lifted the shovel as if to prove she had not brought it as a weapon. Clumps of black dirt clung to the blade. "Were you digging?" Joan asked. "Trying to move a hydrangea before the ground freezes. It has opinions." Rosa looked past her into the cottage. "You staying?" "I'm considering it." "In October?" "I didn't choose the timing." Rosa nodded as though that answer covered more than weather. "Did Frank leave the water on again?" "How did you know?" "He left it on every year. Claimed he'd be back one more weekend, then the first hard freeze would come, and he'd call me in a panic. He told me Daniel shut it off last year. Daniel came up, he carried 2 boxes to his car, and left. Joan pictured her son moving quickly through these rooms after Frank became too sick to return. She wondered what had been in the boxes. Fishing gear, probably, tools. Things Daniel assumed were his because no one had said otherwise. Rosa leaned the shovel against the porch rail. "Let me see your heater. You know heaters?" "I know that heater. It's been trying to kill my patient since 1998. She came inside without ceremony, crouched, and peered through the opening. Thermocouple's dirty. Could be dead. "You have matches?" "Somewhere." Frank kept them in the coffee can above the refrigerator. The can was still there. Rosa took out a box of wooden matches, then asked for an old toothbrush. Joan found one in the bathroom cabinet beside a nearly petrified tube of toothpaste. While Rosa worked, Joan carried in her suitcase Frank's photograph, the tackle box, and the chicken. The cottage seemed to register each object reluctantly, as if it had expected Frank and did not know what to do with her. Rosa got the pilot to hold on the 5th try. The heater made a low whooshing sound. Warm air, dusty and sour, began moving into the room. "That'll get you through today," Rosa said. "No promise after that." "Thank you. You have firewood?" "There's a stack outside. It's wet. There might be some in the shed. That's wet too." Joan looked at the blue tarp flapping beyond the window. Rosa zipped her jacket. "I have dry oak. You can take enough for tonight. I can pay you. You can help me move that hydrangea. I don't know anything about hydrangeas. Neither does the hydrangea. That's why we're fighting." Joan smiled before she could stop herself. Rosa's gaze moved to Frank's photograph, which Joan had placed on the table. Her expression changed, not into pity, but recognition. "He talked about you all the time," she said. "Mostly complaints, I assume." "Not mostly." The answer unsettled Joan, more than agreement would have. Her phone rang again. Kendra, this time. Rosa glanced at the screen but did not ask. "I'll bring the wood over. Don't drink that tap water until you let it run clear and boil it. And don't lean on the porch rail." "Why?" "It'll make a liar out of gravity." After Rosa left, Joan stood in the middle of the room, listening to the heater strain. The phone stopped, then immediately began ringing again. She answered. Kendra did not say hello. "Daniel is talking about driving up there. He has work. He called in late. That was his choice. You're scaring him." Joan looked at the torn recliner, the mouse droppings on the counter, the brown stains spreading across the bedroom ceiling. "I'm scaring myself a little. Then come back. Not come home. Come back." Joan walked to the lake window. Wind pushed narrow waves toward shore. The dock had been pulled out for winter and lay in sections along the bank, gray boards silvered by years of sun and water. "I'm going to stay tonight," she said. "In that place?" "Yes. For what purpose?" Joan nearly gave the easy answer, that she needed space, that everyone should calm down, that they could talk tomorrow. Instead, she watched a pair of dark birds lift from the water and fly low across the cove. "To find out whether I can," she said. Kendra was silent. Then, in a quieter voice, she said, "Joan, Wednesday matters to me. I know it does." The heater clicked off behind her. Joan closed her eyes. Kendra said, "What was that?" "Nothing. I have to go." The heater would not relight. By the time Rosa returned with an armload of split oak, the cottage had begun to cool again, and Joan was kneeling on the floor in her good slacks, holding Frank's toothbrush in one hand and his ridiculous instructions in the other. Rosa set down the wood. "Still considering?" she asked. Joan looked around at the room, at the suitcase she had not unpacked, and the photograph waiting on the table. "No," she said. "Now I'm staying." Rosa stared at her for a moment, then gave one short nod. "All right," she said. "Then first we keep you from freezing out of stubbornness. Freezing for a good reason is still freezing." She took the toothbrush from Joan and worked at the heater again. The pilot lit, held for 40 seconds, and died with a delicate pop. "That's not dirt," Rosa said. "That's a part." "What kind of part?" "The kind that's small, necessary, and costs more after a man looks at it." Rosa pulled a folded receipt from beneath a magnet on the refrigerator. A phone number was written across the back. "Earl Iverson," she said. "He does heaters and plumbing. Don't let him tell you he can come next week. Tell him you're Frank Mercer's widow. Will that help?" "It'll make him curious," Joan called. "Earl said he was booked until Thursday." Joan mentioned Frank. Earl sighed and said he could stop by after lunch, but only because he would be on that side of the lake. Rosa looked pleased when Joan hung up. Curiosity. They built a fire in the stone fireplace. The damper stuck, and smoke rolled into the room until Rosa struck the lever with the handle of the fireplace poker. Joan opened both doors, coughing and laughing, as the smoke alarm remained silent. "Is that thing dead?" she asked. "It was dead when Reagan was president. I'll buy one. Buy two." The oak caught. Heat began to push against the cold, though most of it seemed determined to go up the chimney. Rosa returned to her hydrangea. Joan followed in Frank's old rubber boots, which were too large and made her walk like a child pretending to be a fireman. Across the cove meant farther by road than by water. Rosa's blue house stood behind a low stone wall, compact and freshly painted, with copper-colored grasses bending along the porch. The hydrangea was half dug out and clearly winning. "It's enormous," Joan said. "It wasn't when I planted it. That's generally how plants work." Rosa handed her a second shovel. "Frank said you were funny. Frank said a lot of things when he wanted people to like him. They usually did." "Yes, that was very irritating." They dug in silence for several minutes. Joan's shoulders protested. She had spent 3 years lifting Frank from chairs, guiding him into the shower, steadying him when his blood pressure dropped. After he died, she had expected her body to feel relieved. Instead, it had continued bracing for his weight. Rosa stopped to catch her breath. "Where do you want this monster? Why are you moving it?" "It blocks the kitchen window. It must have blocked it last year." "Last year I was married." Joan waited. Rosa set her shovel into the soil again. "Miguel wanted privacy. Now Miguel wants a condo in Phoenix, and I want to see the lake." There was no tremor in her voice, but she attacked a root hard enough to jar both arms. "I'm sorry," Joan said. "Don't be. He's alive. That's inconvenient, not tragic." Joan laughed, then worried she should not have. Rosa laughed too. He waited until retirement to decide he hated winter and enjoyed golf. 46 years, the man complained about golf. Maybe he met someone who owns clubs. He met himself in Arizona, apparently. They're very happy. Together they levered the root ball from the ground and dragged it 4 feet to a spot near the stone wall. It was not graceful work. Joan slipped once and landed on one knee. Rosa lost a glove in the hole. By the time they packed soil around the plant, both women were breathing heavily. Rosa brought out 2 mugs of tea. "You're not going to be able to lift your arms tomorrow," she said. "I only need them for driving home." Rosa looked sideways at her. "To the cottage," Joan added. Good correction. When Joan returned, a gray van was parked beside the Buick. A thick man in coveralls knelt in front of the propane heater. He had let himself in. "Earl," door was open. "That doesn't mean come in." He looked over one shoulder. "Rosa said you were staying. You'll get used to lake rules. I've had city rules for 69 years. They're deeply embedded," he grunted, possibly amused. Earl replaced the thermocouple, vacuumed soot from the burner, and frowned at the propane gauge outside. He also inspected the water system and found no broken pipes, which felt like a gift until he explained that the pump was old and the pressure tank was losing air. "How much?" Joan asked. "For today?" $285. "And the pump?" "When it quits, $1,200 if nothing else goes wrong." "When will it quit?" Earl shrugged. "That's between the pump and the Lord." Joan wrote him a check. Her hand hesitated over the amount. $285 for less than an hour of work and a metal part smaller than her little finger. Frank used to complain about every bill at the cottage, then buy a new fishing reel without blinking. Joan had never understood how a man could consider plumbing an extravagance and a lure shaped like a wounded minnow an investment. Earl tested the heater. It roared to life and stayed on. "Don't turn it off tonight," he said. "Let the place warm through. Open the cabinet doors under the sinks. Water's going to look ugly until you flush the lines." "Can I drink it?" "Eventually." "That's inspiring." He tore the yellow copy from his receipt book. "Frank always brought bottled. Frank told me the water was fine. Frank didn't drink it." After Earl left, Joan stood at the sink while brown water became amber, then cloudy, then nearly clear. She cleaned the refrigerator with hot water and dish soap. She threw out mustard dated 4 years earlier, a jar of pickles gone pale, and 3 beers that might have qualified as antiques. The mouse had left evidence in every lower cabinet. Joan put on rubber gloves, filled 2 garbage bags, and made a shopping list on the back of Earl's receipt. Traps, bleach, bottled water, smoke alarms, batteries, light bulbs, paper towels, coffee. "Coffee can wait," she wrote, then crossed that out. She was wiping the kitchen table when tires ground over the gravel. Daniel's truck stopped beside the van tracks. He got out still wearing his blue work shirt, the company name stitched above the pocket. He looked at the cottage, the smoking chimney, and his mother through the window. He did not look relieved. Joan opened the door before he reached it. "You called in late," she said. "I went in, I left again." "You shouldn't have. Kendra thought you might be lying injured somewhere." Kendra has a vivid imagination. "She thought you might have fallen. I did fall. Rosa and I moved a hydrangea." Daniel stopped on the porch. "Who's Rosa? Neighbor? You've been here 6 hours and you're landscaping with strangers?" "Only one stranger." He stepped inside and looked around. His eyes went to the ceiling stain, the open cupboards, the bags of trash. "Jesus, Mom, don't lean on the porch rail." The water was never winterized. "I noticed. I thought Dad handled it. Dad was dying." The words landed harder than Joan intended. Daniel looked toward the fireplace. "I came up," he said. "Rosa told me. I checked the place. You didn't turn off the water. It was May. That isn't when you turn it off." He walked to the heater and held a hand in front of it. "Does this even work?" "It does now." "You called someone?" "I called Earl." "Who is Earl?" "The man who fixed it." "How much did he charge?" Joan folded the dishcloth over the edge of the sink. "That is an odd question from someone who didn't call before moving my bed." His face tightened. "I drove an hour and a half to make sure you're all right. And now you have. Would you like some chicken?" "No, I don't want chicken." "You always want chicken. I want you to pack your things." "I haven't unpacked them yet." "Good." Daniel went into the bedroom. Joan heard the scrape of the drop cloth as he pulled it from the mattress. "There's a roof leak," he called. "A stain isn't necessarily a leak. It's wet." That frightened her. She went to the bedroom and pressed 2 fingers to the brown patch. The plaster felt cool and slightly soft. "Could be old moisture," she said. "It rained yesterday." "I'll call someone." "With what money?" "My money?" Daniel turned toward her. "That's what I'm trying to talk to you about. This place eats money. Dad poured cash into it for years, and still managed to leave some. That's not the point." "What is the point?" "The point is, you're making a permanent decision because Kendra moved furniture." Joan stared at him. "You really believe that's what happened?" He looked away first. "I said we handled it badly," he said. "You said you should have called. Fine. We shouldn't have moved your things. I'm sorry. Come back tonight and we'll fix it after Wednesday." There was Wednesday again, planted in the middle of every sentence. "Fix it how?" "We'll work out a schedule." "A schedule for my bedroom?" "For the space." "What happens when she gets another client?" Daniel rubbed both hands over his face. Why does everything have to be a fight? Joan thought of all the fights that had not happened, the dinners she cooked while Kendra worked late, the utility bills she paid without mentioning them. The morning she gave Daniel $65,000 and told him she trusted him to make the suite comfortable. Each silence had seemed like generosity at the time. "I don't know," she said. "I haven't had much practice." He walked outside. Joan followed as far as the screen door. Daniel stood with his hands on his hips, looking toward the lake. "Dad wouldn't want you here alone," he said. "Your father left me alone here every time he went fishing." "That's different." "Yes?" Daniel turned. "What does that mean?" She did not know how to explain it without opening 20 years of marriage in the front yard. Frank had loved her. Frank had also assumed love would remain quietly available while he went wherever he pleased. "It means he managed," she said. "I probably can too." Daniel looked suddenly tired. "At least let me stay tonight. There's one bed. I've slept in the recliner. The recliner is shedding. I'll live." She nearly agreed. The offer touched the frightened part of her that had been listening to every unfamiliar sound since she arrived. Then she saw how the night would go. Daniel checking locks, criticizing the wiring, making coffee in the morning, guiding her back toward the truck as though staying had been a brief episode. "No," she said. "Go home." His mouth opened. "I will call you at 9, she added. "If I'm eaten by wolves, you'll know. There aren't wolves this far south. Then I've eliminated one danger already." He almost smiled. It appeared and disappeared so quickly she might have imagined it. He left before dark. Joan drove to the small grocery store in town, bought everything on her list, and spent another $112. Back at the cottage, she set 2 mouse traps, installed both smoke alarms, and placed Frank's photograph on the bedroom windowsill. She ate cold chicken at the pine table. The heater hummed. Across the cove, warm light shone from Rosa's kitchen. At 8:57, the power went out. The heater stopped. The refrigerator went silent. Darkness pressed against every window at once. Joan sat perfectly still with a fork in her hand. Then someone knocked 3 times on the door. "Joan," Rosa called. "It's me. Don't hit me with anything." Joan set down the fork and felt her way toward the door. Before she reached it, a beam of light swept across the window. Rosa stood on the porch, holding a battery lantern. Beside her was a tall man in an orange watch cap, carrying an armload of wood. His beard was mostly white, his face narrow and wind-burned. "Transformer blew near the county road," Rosa said. "Whole east side is dark." "The cooperative says 2 hours," the man added. "They always say 2 hours," Rosa said. "They could find a Buick at the bottom of the lake and they'd say 2 hours." The man shifted the wood against his chest. "Where do you want this?" Joan opened the door wider. "By the fireplace, please." He stepped around her carefully, ducking beneath the frame, though he did not need to. Rosa set the lantern on the table, illuminating the foil-wrapped chicken, the grocery bags, and Joan's fork still pointed toward an empty chair. "This is Walt Brennan," Rosa said. "He saw my flashlight and assumed I'd injured myself." "You have a reliable history," Walt said. "I slipped off one ladder. You fell through a shed roof. The ladder was involved." Walt stacked the wood on the hearth. When he stood, his gaze settled on Frank's photograph through the bedroom doorway. "You're Joan," he said. "So I'm told." "I fished with Frank. I'm sorry." His eyebrows lifted. "For the fishing," she said. "He was a terrible loser." Walt's face opened into a surprised grin. "He said you didn't understand the seriousness of competition. He once accused a fish of favoring your side of the boat. It did seem personal." Rosa pulled out a chair and sat. "We should get the fire going." Walt had already knelt at the hearth. He arranged the logs with the quick confidence of someone who had performed the task in this room many times. That irritated Joan before she could decide why. "You know where everything is," she said. "Used to." He opened the small cabinet beside the fireplace and took out a bundle of newspaper. Beneath it lay a stack of old fishing magazines and 2 decks of cards. "Frank kept kindling in there," Walt said. "Frank kept kindling in the woodshed. Not after he slipped on the ice carrying it." Joan looked at him. "When did he slip?" Walt paused with the newspaper in his hands. 3 winters ago, maybe. He told me he bruised his hip getting out of the bathtub." Rosa made a quiet sound that could have been sympathy or annoyance. "He didn't want you worrying about him coming up here," Walt said. "He solved that by lying about a household accident." "That sounds like Frank." It did. Joan hated that Walt knew it. The fire caught. Without electric lights, the flames threw restless shadows across the old paneling. The cottage seemed smaller and older, every uneven board made visible. Walt rose. "You have flashlights?" "I bought 2. "Batteries?" "I bought 12. Rosa looked approving. "She's teachable. I've survived power outages before." "Not here," Walt said. "The well pump won't run. Toilet has 1 flush unless you fill the tank by hand. I have bottled water. Don't waste drinking water. There's a bucket on the back porch. Lake water will do." Joan folded her arms. "Anything else?" He considered the question seriously. "Don't open the refrigerator. Keep the bedroom door closed so the heat stays out here. There's probably a kerosene lamp in the shed, but I wouldn't trust the wick." "Anything about wolves?" "Not this far south." Joan was beginning to dislike how often Daniel was right about minor things. Her phone rang on the table. 9 o'clock exactly. Daniel said, "You all right? The power is out." There was silence. Then a chair scraped on his end. "I'm coming back." "No, you are not." "Mom, the outage is affecting the whole road. Rosa is here. Walt is here. We have a fire." "Who's Walt?" "Your father's fishing partner." "Walt Brennan?" The sharpness in Daniel's voice made Joan look at the man. Walt was examining one of the new smoke alarms, pretending not to listen. "You know him?" she asked. "I met him a few times." "Then why did you ask?" "I didn't know he still came around." "He doesn't," Walt said quietly. "Rosa drafted me." Daniel heard him. "Put me on speaker." "No." "Mom, please don't do this." "Do what?" "Collect Dad's old lake friends because you're angry at us." Joan moved away from the table. "I didn't collect anyone." The electricity failed. Kendra said something in the background. Daniel covered the phone, but Joan heard her name and the phrase front closet. What does she need? Joan asked. Nothing. Daniel, Kendra can't find the folding table. It's behind the coats in the front closet. We looked there. It's flat. That's the nature of folding tables. He called the information to Kendra. Joan heard hangers scraping against the closet rod, followed by Kendra saying, "Got it. No thank you," traveled through the phone. Daniel returned. "Call me if the power isn't back by 11. I'll be asleep." "Then call before you go to sleep." Joan looked at the three adults standing around her pine table, the lantern turning their faces gold. "Good night, Daniel." She ended the call. Rosa and Walt stayed until the lights returned at 10:36. Rosa heated water in a blackened kettle on the fire and produced tea bags from her jacket pocket. Walt ate 2 pieces of chicken after refusing 3 times. They spoke mostly about ordinary things: a beaver dam blocking the creek, a grocery store being converted into condominiums, Earl's inability to answer a direct question about a bill. Joan learned that Walt lived 20 minutes away in a small town called Mason Ridge. He had worked for the telephone company until retirement and now repaired wooden boats when anyone could persuade him. His wife had died 6 years earlier. He offered that information plainly, without creating an opening for mutual grief. "Frank stopped calling me near the end," he said while Rosa was in the bathroom. "I should have called him anyway." "He stopped calling everyone," Joan said. "Not you. He was in my house." Walt turned his mug between both hands. "That doesn't always mean a person is reachable." The comment was either wise or presumptuous. Joan decided it was both. After they left, she checked the mouse traps. One had snapped shut on nothing. The other was gone. She found it beneath the refrigerator, dragged several feet from where she had placed it. She did not investigate further. The bedroom was cold. Joan climbed into bed wearing socks and one of Frank's old sweatshirts. Rain began after midnight, tapping against the window and finding a heavier rhythm above the ceiling stain. She turned on the lamp and watched the brown patch. A drop formed at its lowest edge. It swelled, trembled, and fell into the empty wastebasket she had placed beneath it. The sound was soft, unhurried. Another drop followed. Joan lay awake listening. At 1:30, she moved the wastebasket 6 inches to the left. At 2, she got up and put a saucepan beside it. By 3, the leak had divided itself between both containers. Frank had promised to fix that part of the roof, not recently, years earlier, when the stain had been no wider than a dinner plate. "It only leaks in a northeast rain," he had said, as if rain from a particular direction had agreed to respect the rest of the house. Joan had told him to hire someone. Frank said he could repair it himself. She had rolled her eyes, gone back to the kitchen, and allowed the unfinished job to become one more private contest between his delay and her endurance. Now, Frank was gone, and the roof had won. At 7, Joan called the number Earl had written beneath his own on the receipt. The roofer said he could inspect it, Friday. She did not mention Frank's name. Curiosity had limits, and she did not intend to spend her life borrowing urgency from a dead man. She put the kettle on and found a dead mouse in the trap beneath the refrigerator. It was smaller than she expected. For several seconds she stood holding the trap at arm's length, unable to make herself touch the metal bar. A knock sounded. "Doors open!" Joan called, hoping it was Rosa. Walt entered carrying a cardboard tray with 2 coffees and a paper sack spotted with grease. "I brought bribery," he said. Joan was still holding the mousetrap. He looked at it. "Successful night? Depends which one of us you ask." He set down the coffee and reached for the trap. "No," Joan said. Walt stopped. "I can do it. I didn't say you couldn't." "You reached. You looked like you wanted help. I looked like I didn't want to touch a dead mouse. That isn't the same thing." A corner of his mouth moved. "Fair." Joan carried the trap outside, released the mouse into the weeds with her face turned away, and reset it. When she came back, Walt had taken 2 breakfast sandwiches from the sack. He handed her one wrapped in foil. "Rosa said you'd be sore from the hydrangea. Rosa talks fast." She called me at 6:45. Joan sat at the table. Every muscle between her neck and knees objected. Walt looked toward the bedroom. "Roof still leaking?" "I have someone coming Friday." "Who?" "Peterson Roofing. They're fine. I'm relieved they have your approval. You don't have to be." She unwrapped the sandwich. Egg, sausage, orange cheese. Frank's preferred road breakfast. The smell pulled something in her chest before she could guard against it. "Did you bring these for him?" she asked. Walt did not pretend to misunderstand. A long time ago. Joan took a bite. The cheese stuck to the roof of her mouth. Her phone buzzed with a message from Kendra. Where do you keep the large glass pitcher and the white serving tray? Joan looked toward the lake. Morning sun was beginning to break through the clouds, laying a narrow silver path across the water. She typed, "Pitcher is above the refrigerator. Tray is in the basement cabinet behind the roasting pan." 3 dots appeared immediately. Also, Daniel says you have the good tablecloth. Joan stared at the message. The good tablecloth was in her suitcase. Kendra had packed it with Joan's clothes, probably without noticing. It had belonged to Joan's mother, white linen embroidered with small blue flowers. Joan used it every Thanksgiving, though Kendra complained it needed ironing. She typed, "Yes. Can Daniel pick it up tonight?" Joan put the phone face down. Walt drank his coffee without asking. "Frank used to sit exactly where you're sitting," Joan said. "I know. I may move the table. That's allowed." The answer was so simple it annoyed her. Joan picked up the phone and wrote to Kendra. "No. Use yours." Kendra called at once. Joan let it ring. She carried the tablecloth from her suitcase to the kitchen, shook it open, and spread it across the scarred pine table. The linen looked too formal for the cottage, its blue flowers bright against the dark walls. Walt lifted his coffee so she could smooth the cloth beneath it. "There," Joan said. "There what?" "I've made better use of the space." Walt looked at the embroidered flowers, then at Joan. Frank would have spilled coffee on that inside 30 seconds. Frank spilled coffee as a form of ownership. He spilled coffee on my truck once. Did he apologize? He said the cup holder was poorly designed. Joan's phone stopped ringing. A moment later, the voicemail alert appeared. She did not play it. Walt finished his sandwich and carried both wrappers to the trash. "I can look at the roof from outside if you want. I have a roofer coming. Looking is free. Advice rarely is." He nodded, accepting the boundary without acting offended. "Then, I'll leave your roof alone." That was almost more disarming than if he had argued. At the door, he stopped beside the tackle box. "You planning to fish?" "No." Frank would appreciate the clear answer. It was holding open a door. Walt's eyes rested on the dented green lid. That box went everywhere with him. Apparently everywhere except where he wanted a door closed. After Walt left, the cottage became painfully quiet. The heater hummed, but mechanical sound only emphasized the absence of human noise. At Daniel's house, silence had never been complete. Kendra opened and closed cabinets as if each one had personally disappointed her. Daniel listened to television at a volume just below useful. The washing machine played 6 notes when it finished, a tune Joan had come to despise. Here, she could hear water ticking from the eaves. Joan played Kendra's voicemail. "Joan, I don't know why you're ignoring me. I asked for a tablecloth, not a kidney. I have been respectful of Frank's things for almost a year, and I think it's unfair to suddenly use them, or your mother's things, as a way to punish me. Call me." Joan deleted the message, then regretted it. Not because she wanted to hear it again, because deleting it felt like participating in Kendra's version of events, where the tablecloth was the event and everything before, it had somehow vanished. She called back. Kendra answered on the first ring. "Thank you. You're welcome. I'm trying to understand what's happening. So am I. Are you coming home today?" "No." "Tomorrow?" "No." "How long are you staying there?" "I don't know." Kendra was silent for a beat. "Then, how are we supposed to plan?" The question had such naked sincerity that Joan sat down. "You've already planned," she said. "You have the suite, for work, not forever." "How long?" "I can't give you an exact date. That's not how a business grows, and I can't tell you exactly how long I'll be here. That's not how leaving works. I never asked you to leave. You made sure I'd have to ask to stay." Kendra inhaled. Joan could picture her standing in the white sunroom, one hand on her hip, surrounded by sample books and carefully angled chairs. "The back room is perfectly comfortable," Kendra said. "Have you slept there?" "That's not relevant." "Then we disagree. I'm not doing this before my meeting. You called me. I called about the tablecloth. You have a gray one. It's too small. Put the folding table against the wall and use the dining table. The dining room doesn't have the right light." Joan pinched the bridge of her nose. "Then I can't help you." That stopped them both. For years the phrase had been, "I'll take care of it." Joan said it about airport rides, burned casseroles, late deliveries, forgotten anniversaries, loose buttons, and bills Daniel could not understand, even though every number was printed in a box. "I can't help you" sounded unnatural in her own voice, like a sentence learned in another language. Kendra recovered first. "Fine." She ended the call. Joan left the tablecloth where it was and began cleaning the cottage in sections. She took down the curtains, shook out dead flies, and washed the glass until the lake looked less like a picture hanging on the wall. She emptied the kitchen drawers. Frank had kept bottle openers in 4 separate places, and scissors in none. In the bottom drawer, she found a stack of paper napkins from restaurants they had visited over the years. Frank used to tuck them into his pockets because he said a man never knew when he might encounter barbecue. Joan threw away most of them. She kept one from a supper club that had closed 15 years earlier, not because it mattered, but because throwing away every trace at once felt too much like cleaning after his funeral. By noon, her back ached. She ate the second half of her breakfast sandwich standing at the sink. Then she did something she had wanted to do since arriving. She gripped the arms of Frank's recliner and pulled. The chair moved 3 inches and shed a piece of yellow foam. Joan pulled again. One wooden foot caught on the braided rug. She walked around it, tilted it forward, and immediately lost control. The recliner landed face down with a crash that shook the pine table. A cloud of dust rose from its underside. The dead mousetrap snapped in the kitchen. Joan stood in the middle of the room, coughing and laughing so hard she had to hold the wall. Rosa appeared at the open door 10 minutes later. I heard a crash. "I'm rearranging." Rosa looked at the overturned recliner. Looks like the chair disagreed. Together they dragged it onto the screened porch. Rosa did most of the pulling and refused to admit it. The chair scraped a dark line across the floor. "What are you putting there?" Rosa asked. "I don't know." "Good. What's good about not knowing? You're not decorating around a man who isn't coming back." The words might have sounded cruel from someone else. From Rosa, they were simply level. They sat on the porch step, careful not to touch the rail. The lake had calmed. Small waves folded against the shore, with a sound like cloth being shaken out. "Did you like it here?" Rosa asked. "No, you came often." Frank liked it. "That isn't what I asked." Joan rubbed dust from her palms. "I liked parts, the mornings, the way food tasted after being outside. I liked Frank when he had a fish on the line, before he knew whether he would land it. He looked young then. And the rest? There were mosquitoes. Everything smelled damp. Frank became 12 years old and forgot cups belonged in sinks." Rosa smiled. "I used to think this place got the best of him," Joan said. "He came up here cheerful. At home, there was always a gutter or a prescription or something I needed him to remember. Maybe the cottage didn't ask anything. No, I did all the asking for it." She pointed toward the rotten porch step, the packed gutters, the sagging roof. Rosa followed her gaze. "Fair." Joan's phone buzzed. A message from Daniel said, "Kendra's stressed. Please don't make today harder." Joan slipped the phone back into her pocket. "She's having clients tomorrow," she told Rosa. "And you're somehow responsible from 90 miles away? I own the good tablecloth. That kind of power corrupts." They laughed, but after Rosa went home, Joan opened her checkbook at the kitchen table. She wrote down the expenses in the register. Earl, $285. Groceries and supplies, $112.43. Gas. More propane soon. The roof could cost several thousand. The pump waited somewhere in the future, with its private arrangement with the Lord. Her pension and Social Security covered ordinary life. The savings from Beach Street had once made her feel secure, even after the contribution for the suite. Now she saw how quickly security could become invoices. The $800 she gave Daniel and Kendra each month paid for more than her portion of utilities. Everyone knew it, though no one said so. She had started the payments after moving in because she refused to be kept. Kendra had protested exactly once, then begun depositing the checks before the ink seemed dry. Joan drew a line beneath the month's expenses. The following day, she kept herself away from the phone during Kendra's meeting. She drove into town for a sturdy trash can and a small electric kettle. At the hardware store, she bought cream-colored paint samples, then felt foolish and put them back. Choosing wall color while the roof leaked was something Kendra would do. She bought them anyway. At 2:15, Daniel called. "How did the meeting go?" Joan asked. "Fine. Fine good or fine terrible?" "Fine. They liked her work." "I'm glad." She was up until 2 getting ready. Joan waited for the part where this became her fault. She couldn't find the silver coffee urn, Daniel said. It's on the basement shelf near the water heater. We found it after they left. You have a regular coffee maker. That's what she used. Then there was coffee. Daniel sighed. You know, it wouldn't have killed you to help. The sentence was so ordinary in his voice that Joan felt something inside her go still. I have helped, she said. I mean yesterday. I know what you mean. Can we not keep score? I wish I had started sooner. He went quiet. In the background, Joan heard cabinet doors and the rip of packing tape. Daniel said, Kendra wants to know whether she can move the rest of your clothes into storage, just so the back room isn't half finished. Joan stared at the paint cards spread across the table. My clothes are not unfinished business. That's not what she meant. Tell her not to touch anything else. How long do you expect us to keep a room exactly as you left it if you're not coming back? Joan almost said she had been gone 2 days. Then she understood the shape of his question. You want the back room too? No. We need to know what you're doing. I'm staying here for now. Then are you still paying toward the house? There it was, quiet and practical. Joan looked at the checkbook. No. Daniel did not answer. I'm paying to make this place livable, she said. I can't support 2 households. We budgeted around that money. Did you budget around me or the check? That's unfair. Is it? You said you didn't want to live for free. I'm not living there. You left because of an argument. I left because I no longer had a room. You have a room. A bed fit in it. That isn't the same. The silence that followed felt different from their earlier silences. This one had numbers inside it. Finally, Daniel said, You need to come get your things. Joan's hand tightened around the phone. All right, she said. I'll come tomorrow. She ended the call, folded the paint cards into her purse, and looked around Frank's cottage. Until that moment, she had been proving she could stay. Now, for the first time, she began to understand that they might let her. The house looked smaller when Joan returned to it. Nothing physical had changed. The gutters still needed cleaning. Kendra's rosemary pots still lined the front steps, each one trimmed into a tight little cone. Daniel's truck was gone, and the garage door was closed. Yet, as Joan sat in the Buick with the engine running, she had the peculiar feeling of arriving at a house she had once toured with a real estate agent. She knew the square footage. She knew which upstairs window stuck in humid weather. She knew the dishwasher needed a hip pressed against it before the latch would catch. She was no longer certain she belonged inside. Kendra opened the front door before Joan reached it. I saw you pull up, I gathered. Kendra wore black pants and a soft tan blouse Joan had never seen before. Her hair was pinned neatly at the nape of her neck, but she was barefoot. A blister bandage showed above one heel. How was the meeting? Joan asked. I think it went well. Daniel said it did. They liked the room. Kendra glanced toward the French doors. The builder's project manager asked for my portfolio. That sounds promising. It could be. Neither woman moved. Finally, Kendra stepped aside. I made coffee. No, thank you. You drove 90 miles. I had coffee on the way. It was a lie. Joan had deliberately passed Frank's gas station because she did not want the day to begin with another cup that tasted like plastic. The sunroom no longer resembled a place where anyone had lived. Kendra had arranged a low cream sofa beneath the windows. Large squares of fabric hung from a black rail on the wall. On the dresser, where Frank's photograph and Joan's blue earring dish had stood, there were 3 stone vases containing dried grass. It was beautiful. That made Joan angrier than if Kendra had done a poor job. What did they think of the fabrics? She asked. They liked the blue collection. I always thought blue would work in here. Kendra looked at her, hearing what lay beneath the sentence. The back room was worse than Joan remembered. The bed had been stripped. Her sheets and green quilt were piled on the sewing chair. The portable wardrobe remained unopened in its box. Daniel's exercise bike had somehow moved closer to the bed, as though expanding into the space she had vacated. Joan took empty boxes from the garage and began with her clothes. Kendra stood in the doorway. Are you taking everything? That's what Daniel asked. He was upset. Was he? He didn't mean you had to clear it out immediately. I drove all this way. I might as well make good use of the trip. Kendra flinched at her own phrase coming back. Joan folded sweaters into one box. She packed underwear into her suitcase, shoes into the grocery bag where Kendra had placed them, and bathroom items into the plastic caddy. From beneath the bed, she pulled a framed photograph of Daniel at 22, grinning beside a dented red car he had bought with his first steady paycheck. She held it up. Did you pack this? I packed everything from the nightstand drawer. You didn't look? There were a lot of things, Joan. Joan wrapped the frame in a sweatshirt. Kendra came into the room and lifted the stack of bedding from the chair. I'll get a bag for these. I can manage. I know you can manage. That doesn't mean I can't carry a quilt. She took the bedding away before Joan could answer. There had always been moments like that with Kendra, small flashes of practical kindness that made it difficult to fit her neatly into the role of selfish daughter-in-law. When Frank's ankles swelled, Kendra had found socks that did not leave marks. She had driven him to cardiology appointments when Joan was sick. At the funeral home, she had noticed Joan's hands shaking and buttoned her coat without making a show of it. Then she had moved Joan's bed. Kendra returned with 2 zippered storage bags. Together, they folded the quilt. Kendra aligned the edges precisely, smoothing each wrinkle with the side of her hand. "This can't stay at the cottage," she said. "Why?" "It'll smell like wood smoke. It has been washed before. It was expensive." "I made it." Kendra stopped smoothing. "You did?" The winter Daniel was 27. Frank said the green looked like pond water. "I thought you bought it." "You never asked." Joan placed it in the storage bag. They packed for nearly an hour without discussing the monthly check. Kendra carried boxes to the hallway. Joan emptied the closet and found 2 blouses that did not belong to her hanging at the far end. "These are yours." Kendra looked over. "I wondered where those went." "You wondered inside my closet?" "They must have gotten mixed up in the laundry." Joan handed them to her. "Laundry is treacherous that way." Kendra accepted the blouses. "I know you're angry. I'm packing." "That isn't an answer. It wasn't a question." "Fine. Are you angry?" "Yes." "So am I." Joan turned from the closet. "About what?" "About being treated like I woke up Sunday and decided to put you in a closet." "It's a den. That isn't the point." "No. Apparently the point is how unfair this has been to you." Kendra threw the blouses onto the bed. "I have spent 11 months trying to work around everyone else in this house. Your appointments, Daniel's schedule, Frank's boxes in the garage that no one is allowed to touch, your groceries in every cabinet, your television on every night at 7. Even if you're not watching it, I watch the news, you fall asleep. Then it's comforting." Kendra pressed her fingers to her temples. "I had a woman ask me yesterday whether I was serious about my business. She was sitting in the room I designed, looking at work I did. And for the first time, I could say yes without feeling ridiculous." Joan heard both the pride and the plea. "I'm glad the room helped you," she said, "but you did not ask me for it. You would have said no. You decided that gave you the right not to ask." Kendra looked away. Joan closed the last box. "Where is the key to the storage unit?" "Daniel has it." "I want the cedar chest. It won't fit in your car." "I didn't say today. There's nowhere to put it in that cottage. That is my problem. The chest weighs 100 pounds. Also my problem. You make everything sound so simple." "No, I'm finally making my problems mine." The front door opened. Daniel called, "Mom?" He appeared in the hall carrying 2 flattened produce boxes. He had changed out of his work shirt and wore a gray sweatshirt. "You left work again," Joan said. "I took lunch." "You worked 20 minutes away. I took a long lunch." Kendra crossed her arms. "Did you think I couldn't handle this? I came to help load. I have been helping. I didn't say you weren't. You didn't have to." The phrase echoed Kendra's words from dinner. Daniel heard it too. His eyes moved quickly to Joan. "Let's just get her things in the car," he said. "Her things. Not Mom's things." Daniel carried out the heaviest boxes. Kendra fitted smaller items around them, with the skill of someone loading a moving van in miniature. Joan's sewing chair went into the back seat upside down, its wooden legs nearly touching the roof. Frank's photograph and Daniel's red car photograph lay wrapped together on the passenger floor. There was not enough room for everything. "I can bring the rest," Daniel said. "Maybe Sunday." "And the chest. We'll need to borrow a trailer, then borrow one." Kendra stood beside the open trunk. "Before you go, we need to talk about the $800. Daniel shut his eyes briefly. "So you told her," Kendra said. "She told me." Joan adjusted a box that did not need adjusting. "I'm not paying expenses at a house where I don't live." "You do live here," Kendra said. "Or you did until 3 days ago. My things were in a temporary rack beside the dryer. We still have increased utilities. The renovation. The insurance went up when we added the suite. I paid $65,000 for that suite. That did not cover everything." Daniel said, "Kendra, No, if we're discussing money, let's discuss money. Heated floors, new windows, plumbing, permits. We spent more than Joan gave us. And now you have a showroom, Joan said. Kendra's face reddened. A showroom that might help me earn something. I hope it does. You keep saying that like an insult. I keep saying it because it's true. Daniel put both hands on the trunk lid but did not close it. Could we have a month to adjust? Joan looked at him. Adjust what? Our budget. You haven't had to buy my groceries this week. Your electric bill should be lower, so should the water. It doesn't work that fast. No. It usually takes until a woman leaves for people to notice what she was paying for. Kendra stepped back as if slapped. Daniel lowered his voice. We counted on the contribution, and I counted on the room. A car passed slowly at the end of the street. Joan waited until it was gone. I'll pay my share through the end of this month, she said. Nothing after that. We're already near the end of the month, Kendra said. I'm aware. Daniel nodded before Kendra could answer. All right, she turned on him. All right, we'll figure it out. You always say that when you mean, I'll figure it out. Joan heard something in Kendra's voice then, a strain wider than one room or one client meeting. Daniel heard it too. His jaw tightened. Not now, he said. Of course not now. Kendra went inside and closed the door without slamming it. The restraint was louder than a slam. Daniel stared at the house. How bad is it? Joan asked. He reached for the trunk lid. How bad is what? Your budget. We're fine. Kendra doesn't sound fine. She's stressed about the business. What are you not telling me? Nothing. Frank had used the same flat tone whenever a bill arrived that he had already hidden from her for a week. Daniel had inherited more than gray eyes and a soft middle. Joan put a hand on the trunk before he could close it. Do not ask me for the cottage. His expression changed. It was slight. A pause, a narrowing around the eyes, but it told her the thought had already occurred to him. I didn't, he said. Not yet. The place needs work. You know that. So does this one. This house has value. To whom? Daniel looked at the sunroom windows. Behind them, Kendra moved past the hanging fabric samples, her shape blurred by reflected sky. We just need some time, he said. Joan removed her hand. Daniel closed the trunk. On the drive north, the Buick pulled slightly on hills under the weight of her belongings. At the gas station outside Portage, Joan finally stopped for coffee. The same cashier worked behind the counter, a young-looking man whose gray beard proved he was not as young as he seemed. He handed Joan the paper cup. Haven't seen you twice in 1 week before, he said. I'm changing my habits. Coffee's still terrible. I know. She carried it outside and stood beside the crowded car. Her whole life, packed by people who had needed the room, pressed against the windows in sweaters, boxes, and upside-down furniture. Joan took one sip and poured the coffee into the trash. Some traditions did not improve merely because you kept returning to them. By the time Joan reached the cottage, the light had begun to fade. The Buick's rear end sat low beneath the weight of boxes, and every turn had made the sewing chair tap its wooden leg against the window. Rosa appeared before Joan had opened the trunk. You robbed a department store. I retrieved my clothes. All of them? Apparently I was dressing for several climates. Rosa lifted a box marked sweaters and grunted. Or several bodies. They carried everything inside. The cottage resisted. Boxes blocked the kitchen cabinets. The suitcase would not fit beneath the bed. The sewing chair, once turned upright, seemed too elegant for the rough room, its faded blue upholstery catching the color of the lake. Joan placed it where Frank's recliner had stood. She waited for the arrangement to feel wrong. It did, but not for the reason she expected. The chair did not look too delicate. It looked as though it had been waiting for the room to make space. Rosa spread Joan's green quilt over the bed. You made this? Years ago. It's good. Kendra thought I bought it. Kendra buys things that look handmade. She does. Rosa looked at her, checking whether the remark was mean. Joan smoothed one corner of the quilt. She helped me pack. That complicates your speech about her. I wasn't preparing a speech. Everyone prepares speeches. Sensible people don't give most of them. Joan unpacked until the last daylight disappeared. She hung clothes from nails Frank had driven along the bedroom wall and filled the dresser with the rest. Her blue earring dish went beside Frank's photograph. The picture of Daniel with his dented red car stood on the opposite corner. The room looked crowded, but it looked inhabited. At 9, Joan noticed a missed call from Kendra. No message. She considered calling back, then decided that people with urgent information generally left words. The roofers arrived the next morning in a truck with Peterson painted on the door in peeling red letters. The man who climbed onto the roof was younger than Joan expected, with a narrow face and an old man's careful knees. His name was Mitch. He spent 20 minutes above the bedroom, while his assistant leaned against the truck, drinking something from a thermos. When Mitch came down, he wiped his hands on his jeans. "You've got failed flashing around the vent, missing shingles on the north side, and soft decking near the eave." "How soft?" "Soft enough I wouldn't dance up there. I hadn't planned to. I can patch the active leak and replace the worst section." 1250. Joan's stomach tightened. "And that fixes it?" "It fixes that part. Roof's near the end of its life." "How near?" He squinted at the shingles, as though they might answer. "Could get another winter. Could lose a section in a bad storm." "A whole roof?" "6 to 8, depending what we find underneath." $6,000 to $8,000. Joan repeated the numbers silently until they became arithmetic instead of threat. "What would you do?" she asked. "If it were mine, yes. I'd patch it now, save for spring, and stop listening to the forecast every time the wind comes up." Joan wrote the deposit check for the patch. Mitch tore off her receipt. "We can do it. Tuesday." "Tuesday? You're lucky." A bigger job got delayed waiting on windows. After the truck left, Joan sat at the pine table with her checkbook and the cream paint cards. The cottage had cost her more in 4 days than she once spent during an entire month. Frank had never shown her the full cost. He would mention propane, but not taxes, shingles, but not labor. He treated money at the cottage the way he treated fish. The disappointing parts became smaller with each retelling. Joan opened the tackle box. The hinges squealed. Inside were divided trays of lures, swivels, lead weights, and hooks nested together like dangerous jewelry. A pair of pliers had rusted shut. At the bottom lay a sunscreen tube, a half roll of peppermints, and 3 scorecards from fishing trips with Walt. Frank had recorded the catch in columns: F, 4, W, 6. Beside Walt's 6, Frank had written suspicious weather advantage. Joan carried the scorecards to the fireplace. She almost burned them, then placed them back in the box. Annoyance was a poor reason to destroy something, and affection was not required for keeping it. A car horn sounded outside. Rosa leaned from her station wagon. "Put on shoes." "We're going to lunch." "Where?" "The bait shop." That sentence does not improve with explanation. The bait shop stood beside a narrow public launch, a low green building with an open sign blinking even though the door was propped wide. Half the shelves were empty for the season. A refrigerator case held night crawlers and white cartons beside cans of soda. At the back, 4 tables had been pushed together beneath mounted fish. A slow cooker of chili steamed beside bowls, cornbread, and a sheet cake iced with the words, "Closed till April." "It's not lunch," Joan said. "It's seasonal grief with chili," Rosa said. Walt was there, along with the shop's owners, sisters named Janice and Beth Koenig, and 3 men Joan vaguely remembered from summers with Frank. Each of them greeted her with the same phrase, "Frank's Joan." By the 4th time, she said, "For convenience, you can call me Joan." There was a brief silence. Then Janice, a broad woman with silver braids, said, "Good. Frank's Joan is too many syllables." They made room for her. The chili was better than it looked. The cornbread was worse. People traded stories about boats that had failed, whether they had survived, and customers who believed expensive fishing equipment could replace patience. Joan expected Frank to be the center of every conversation once they knew who she was. Instead, his name surfaced and disappeared naturally. Walt described the time Frank backed a trailer into a picnic table. Beth recalled him arguing that a 12-inch fish measured 14 if its mouth was open. He could make 2 inches sound like a moral principle, Joan said. Everyone laughed. Later, while Rosa helped Janice wrap leftover cornbread, Walt joined Joan beside the window overlooking the launch. "He wanted to come up that last summer," he said. "He could barely walk to the mailbox. I told him that." "How did he take it? Stop speaking to me?" Joan turned. "That's why he stopped calling?" "Partly. I told him the cottage was too much. Said he ought to sell while you still had the patience to help. He told me you were having trouble with your boat business. I was. That wasn't why." Joan watched Beth flip the open sign to closed. "He said people change after their wives died." Walt's mouth tightened. "I did. He made it sound as if you'd become bitter. I did that too. Were you? For a while. Then I was just tired of Frank acting like illness was an argument he could win if everyone else stopped mentioning it. Joan looked down at her hands. I mentioned it constantly. He complained about that, I'm sure. He also said you were the only reason he was still alive to complain. The words entered gently and hurt anyway. Joan walked outside. The air smelled of cold water and gasoline. Boats were gone from most of the slips, leaving empty ropes knocking against the posts. Walt followed, but kept several feet between them. I don't need people translating my husband to me, Joan said. I know. You met the lake version. He slept late here. He came home rested and handed me a bag of fish as though he'd done the grocery shopping. He talked about you. He came home to me. That matters more. Yes. Joan expected him to defend Frank. His agreement took away the fight she had prepared. She folded her arms against the wind. Did he ever tell you he was going to fix the roof? Every year. That made her laugh despite herself. Walt smiled. What did Peterson say? 1,200 for the leak. 6 to 8 for the whole thing. That sounds right. I was hoping you'd tell me he was cheating me. No, houses are expensive when they stop being somebody else's hobby. On Sunday, Daniel arrived with the rest of Joan's boxes in his truck. No trailer, no cedar chest. The rental place didn't have one available, he said before she asked. You could have called. I knew you'd say to come anyway. He carried in 2 kitchen boxes, a lamp, and a plastic tote of winter clothes. He had also brought groceries, bread, eggs, soup, oranges, coffee, and a package of paper towels large enough for a restaurant. I didn't ask for these, Joan said. I know. Are you trying to replace the $800 with soup? I saw a sale. He began putting things away without asking where they belonged. Joan moved the bread after he placed it on top of the refrigerator. Daniel noticed the sewing chair by the lake window. You got that in the car? Rosa and I got it out. He ran a hand over its blue upholstery. Dad hated this chair. Your father hated any chair that required posture. Daniel looked toward the porch, where the recliner sat upside down awaiting disposal. You threw his out. It was broken. He loved that thing. He also loved a pair of slippers with holes through both soles. Daniel smiled. Those brown ones? Your father's toes reached the kitchen before he did. They laughed together, and for a few seconds the cottage loosened around them. Then he saw the receipt on the table. $12.50 for a patch? I got another estimate by phone. It was higher. You're putting real money into this. I assumed Peterson wanted real money. Daniel did not laugh. He walked to the window, hands in his pockets. Kendra's meeting led to another appointment, he said. That's good. It might turn into something. I hope it does. He nodded, still facing the lake. If it doesn't, things are going to be tight. Joan waited. We could all take a breath, he continued. You could come back for the winter. We'll put a proper wardrobe in the den. Maybe replace the exercise bike with a small dresser. So, your solution is a better back room. My solution is no one making decisions they can't undo. Joan picked up one of the cream paint cards. I can repaint a wall. A roof isn't a wall, no. What happens when the pump goes? I replace it. And after that, something else will break. That's what houses do. Mom, why this house? The answer could have been frank. Anger, pride, all were true and insufficient. Because no one moved me into it, she said. Daniel looked at the embroidered tablecloth, the sewing chair, the green quilt visible through the bedroom door. He seemed to understand that he was standing not in his father's fishing cottage, but in the beginning of something his mother had not invited him to define. He picked up the darkest paint card. This one looks like nicotine, he said. I know, your father would have loved it. Daniel handed it back. Use the warm cream. After he left, Joan taped the warm cream card to the paneled wall. Then she carried Frank's red flannel shirt from the bedroom hook, folded it carefully, and placed it in the cedar-scented bottom drawer. The nail remained empty. The roofers arrived in a cold drizzle on Tuesday and covered the ground beneath the bedroom eave with blue tarps. For 3 hours, hammers struck above Joan's head, with such force that dust sifted from the ceiling light. Mitch came down twice to show her pieces of blackened wood. Is that mine? Joan asked the second time. Unless your neighbor donated rotten decking. How much more? He rubbed a thumb across the wet edge. 200 for the extra sheet and labor. You said $12.50. I said based on what we could see. I'm looking now. That piece is smaller than my cutting board. Mitch looked toward his assistant, who developed a sudden interest in the latter. "You're Frank's wife, aren't you?" Mitch asked. "Widow. My dad knew him. That does not make the board larger." Mitch stared at her, then laughed. 175, 90, and I clean your gutter over the leak. All the gutters. You bargain like Frank. I paid his bills. Frank only thought he bargained. They settled on 90. When the roofers left, the bedroom ceiling remained stained, but rain no longer tapped into the saucepan. Joan stood beneath the patch, listening for a drop that did not come. The silence was more satisfying than she expected. She moved the saucepan back to the kitchen. The next morning, she drove into town and bought 2 gallons of warm cream paint, rollers, tape, and a folding step stool. The clerk asked whether she wanted one of the taller ladders displayed by the entrance. "I'm painting walls, not proving anything," Joan said. At the cottage, Rosa inspected the stool. "Sensibly dull. That was my goal. Good. I'm tired of dramatic women moving here and falling off things. How many dramatic women have moved here? 1 now, potentially." They pushed the pine table toward the center of the room and covered it with an old sheet. Joan removed the curtains. Rosa unscrewed outlet covers. They worked around the stone fireplace, which made every straight line look crooked. The first stripe of cream paint shocked Joan. Against the dark paneling, it looked almost white. "Oh," she said. "You hate it? I don't know yet. Excellent. Keep going." By noon, one wall had changed. The room seemed wider, though every piece of furniture remained crowded beneath the windows. The mounted fish above the fireplace looked newly ridiculous against the lighter color. There were 3 of them: a bass with its mouth permanently open, a northern pike curved on a wooden plaque, and a bluegill so small that mounting it seemed less like celebration than a warning. Walt arrived carrying a toolbox. "Rosa said you were desecrating history," he said. Rosa exaggerates. "I said, improving history," Rosa called from the kitchen. Joan pointed her roller toward the fish. "Can you take those down?" Walt studied the wall. "All of them? Unless one pays taxes." The pike was Frank's favorite. Frank's favorite was whichever fish made someone else's look smaller. Walt set down the toolbox and removed the base first. A pale rectangle showed where the plaque had protected the paneling from years of smoke. "You know this isn't the fish he said it was," Walt said. "What does that mean?" "He said he caught it off Crane Point. He told me that story every summer. Beth caught it. Beth Koenig, she gave it to him because she didn't want to clean it. Frank had it mounted and gradually edited her out." Rosa laughed from the kitchen. "That is the most Frank thing I've ever heard." Joan looked at the bass's glass eye. "Take it to Beth. She won't want it. Then let her refuse her own fish." The pike belonged to Walt. He admitted this only after Joan asked why he was smiling at it. "Frank landed it," he said. "I hooked it. So both of you spent years claiming it? That was the arrangement. Do you want it? No? Good. It can live in your workshop until you develop honesty." Walt carried the fish to his truck. The bluegill left 2 small screw holes and an outline no larger than a dinner plate. Joan held it in both hands. "Daniel caught this," she said. "How old was he?" Rosa asked. 29. Rosa blinked. "I was expecting 9. He'd had a terrible year, lost his job, broke off an engagement, moved back home. Frank brought him here for a week." Joan ran her thumb along the edge of the plaque. "Daniel hated fishing, but he caught this from the dock his first morning. Frank acted as if it were a record. That one stays," Rosa said. Joan looked at the absurd little fish and nodded. They painted around it. By late afternoon, the cottage no longer resembled the room Joan remembered. The cream walls held the weak autumn light. The braided rug looked brighter. Her sewing chair seemed less like a visitor. Rosa stood in the center of the room, with paint on her cheek. "Now you need people in it. There are 3 people in it. Walt left. 2 is still plural, you know what I mean." Joan did, and the idea frightened her more than inviting anyone to Daniel and Kendra's house ever had. There, she had always known what belonged where. 12 plates, cloth napkins for holidays, paper for everything else. Frank at one end, Daniel at the other, Kendra shifting the flowers because they blocked conversation. Here, the table seated 6 only if everyone was friendly with their elbows. Joan invited Rosa and Walt for supper the following night. Rosa invited Janice and Beth without asking. Beth brought her partner, Louise, who brought an apple pie and a folding chair. Walt appeared with the mounted bass tucked under his arm. Beth stared at it. "Why is that ugly thing back?" It's yours, Joan said. It has Frank's name on it. He was flexible with history. Beth turned the plaque over, examined the brass plate, and began laughing so hard she had to set it on the porch. He told everybody he fought this fish for 20 minutes. You handed it to him? Joan asked. I tossed it into his cooler because I was late opening the shop. They left the base face down beside the retired recliner. Joan served beef stew, biscuits, and a salad no one touched until she reminded them. The good tablecloth covered the pine table. Its embroidered blue flowers disappeared beneath mismatched bowls, butter, salt, and 2 bottles of wine Walt claimed were different but tasted identical to Joan. The room grew warm. Everyone spoke at once. Louise told a story about Rosa backing a boat trailer into the lake without the boat. Rosa denied it in 3 increasingly specific ways. Janice offered to help Joan choose a new mattress before winter, because the store in Mason Ridge delivered free on Thursdays. Joan found herself watching the door, not waiting for anyone exactly, just aware that Daniel had never seen the cottage like this. Frank had many times. He had sat among these people while Joan remained home, believing the cottage was mostly silence and fish. The old resentment rose, but it no longer filled the room. There was too much laughter for that. Her phone buzzed beside the stove. Kendra. Joan let the call go to voicemail. Later, after everyone had left and Rosa had carried the final bowls to the sink, Joan listened. Hi, I need you to call me about the payment for next month. Daniel says you're serious about stopping it, and I don't think either of you understands what that does to us. Please call before this becomes another decision no one discussed. Joan stood in the newly painted room. On the porch, the base's open mouth pointed toward the floor. Rosa watched her. Trouble? Kendra wants to discuss my payment. Do you? No. Then wash the bowls tomorrow. That isn't helpful. It isn't meant to be. It's late. Joan slept badly. In the morning, she called Kendra before she could lose her nerve. I am serious, Joan said. You haven't even been gone 2 weeks. Time doesn't make the utilities here free. You paid Earl and the roofers from savings. How do you know that? Daniel saw the receipt. Joan remembered him standing at the table, his hand on Peterson's estimate. My finances are not an open household discussion. They are when they affect our mortgage. The agreement was that I contributed while living there. I no longer live there, because you chose not to. After you chose my room for something else. Kendra let out a quick breath. We could make the den better. I don't want a better den. You haven't given us a chance to fix anything. You still want the sunroom? I need the sunroom. And I need a home. You have one worth money sitting on a lake. Joan went still. Kendra continued too quickly. I'm not saying sell it tomorrow. I'm saying there are options. That property is sitting there, costing you thousands, while you have a comfortable place here, and we're trying to keep everything afloat. You want me to sell the cottage. I want all of us to be realistic. And what happens to the money? We would talk about it as a family. We didn't discuss the back room as a family. That is not an answer. No, Joan said. The answer is I'm not selling. She ended the call. Daniel called 7 minutes later. You hung up on her. Yes. She was trying to have an adult conversation. She was trying to spend my cottage. No one can spend a cottage. You know what I mean? Daniel's voice softened. Mom, you don't even like that place. Joan looked at the warm cream walls. The little bluegill still hung above the fireplace, ludicrous and loyal. I'm beginning to. At what cost? That seems to be everyone's favorite question when I spend money on myself. It isn't about you spending money on yourself. What is it about? He did not answer directly. Dad always said the cottage was for the family. I am the family. You know that's not what he meant. The words came out before Daniel could stop them. Joan sat down slowly. What did he mean? I mean all of us. Long term. Long term, I'm dead. Is that the schedule you're working from? Jesus, Mom. I asked you not to ask me for the cottage, and I'm asking you to think, not react. I thought all night. About $800. We're talking about a property worth? I don't care what it's worth. You should. Then you should care what your house is worth. Silence. Daniel said, We live here, so do I. She ended the call and immediately wished she had not. Not because she wanted to change her answer, but because the last words sounded uncertain in the quiet cottage. A sharp wind pushed across the lake. The repaired roof gave one low creak. Joan walked from room to room, touching the things she had chosen, the green quilt, the blue dish, the cream wall, the good tablecloth folded over the chair. On the porch, she turned the mounted base face up. its mouth open toward her in permanent accusation. "You're still Beth's fish," Joan told it. Then she carried it to the woodshed, shut the door, and returned to the cottage before the cold could follow her inside. The cottage felt different after the calls. Nothing had moved. The heater still breathed warm air into the main room. Pale paint brightened the walls. Yet Daniel's question about value seemed to linger beside every object, turning the table into lumber, the window into lake frontage, the bedroom into square footage. Joan carried the woodshed key to a drawer and shut it away. She spent the afternoon touching up paint around the fireplace. Twice she caught herself listening for Daniel's truck. By dusk, she was angry at him for not coming, and angrier at herself for wanting him to. Rosa arrived with a bowl covered in foil. Louise made too much rice. No one makes too much rice by accident. She made enough for a wedding, and then remembered she was cooking for two. Joan took the bowl. "Thank you." Rosa looked past her. "You've got the face." "What face?" "The one people make when a phone has ruined a perfectly good day." Joan set the rice on the counter. "Daniel thinks the cottage belongs to the family. Families say that when one person owns something useful. He says Frank meant it for all of us." "What did Frank put in writing?" "Nothing relevant. The cottage is mine." "Then we're not discussing ownership?" "No. We're discussing whether your son can make you feel selfish." Joan pulled the foil from the bowl. Steam fogged her glasses. "He's very talented." The temperature dropped hard that night. Wind swept dead leaves across the porch and pressed them into the corners. At dawn, frost whitened the dock sections along the shore. Joan turned on the kitchen faucet. The pipes gave a low shudder. A thin stream appeared, weakened, and stopped. She tried the bathroom. "Nothing." "Don't," she whispered. The pump did not respect the request. Earl arrived after 10, wearing the same coveralls and carrying a red metal toolbox. He checked the pressure switch, crawled beneath the cottage, and stood beside the well casing with one hand on his hip. "Pump's done. You said it might quit." "It did." "I thought you meant eventually." "This is eventually." Joan folded her arms against the cold. "Can it be repaired?" "Not sensibly." "I can replace it tomorrow if I get the unit from Eau Claire." "How much?" $12.20, unless the wiring gives me trouble." "Does the wiring intend to give you trouble?" "Wiring doesn't share plans." She wanted to hate him for the answer, but Earl had never pretended the cottage would be inexpensive. "I'll think about it," she said. "You need water, I'm aware." "You planning to stay?" "Yes." "Then there's not much thinking." Earl left 2 5-gallon buckets by the sink. Rosa filled them from her outside spigot and refused payment for the water. "Don't get sentimental," she said. "It's well water. I didn't make it." Joan carried 1 bucket from Rosa's station wagon to the kitchen and spilled a third across the floor. Her hands hurt from the plastic handle. She used lake water to flush the toilet and heated a saucepan for washing. By evening, the cottage smelled faintly of boiled metal. She sat at the table with her checkbook. The roof patch, heater repair, pump, groceries, propane, paint. The numbers marched down the page, each reasonable by itself, frightening together. Joan called Elaine and Madison. Her sister answered with, "Are you still at that cabin?" "Cottage. A cottage has flowers around the door. That place has fish nailed to the walls. Only 1 fish now." Elaine listened while Joan described the pump. She did not interrupt, which meant she was preparing something. "You can stay here," she said when Joan finished. "For how long?" "As long as you need. That isn't a number. You always need numbers. They keep people from saying forever when they mean Thursday." Elaine sighed. "Come for a week. Take a shower. Think about what you're doing." Joan looked toward the bedroom. The green quilt was smooth on the bed. Frank's red shirt rested in the bottom drawer. Her sewing chair faced the lake. "I know what I'm doing." "Then why did you call me?" The question was fair. "Because I wanted someone to tell me $1,200 is not a disaster." "It isn't." "Thank you. It's a warning. You nearly made it." Elaine laughed. "Pay the man. You hate other people's showers." Joan called Earl and told him to replace the pump. Daniel phoned while Earl and his assistant were working the next afternoon. Their boots tracked mud through the kitchen. Every few minutes, the assistant asked for a tool Earl had already told him to bring. "What's all that noise?" Daniel asked. "The pump quit." "What?" "It's being replaced." "When did this happen?" "Yesterday. You didn't call me. I called Earl. I mean, why didn't you tell me? So you could repair it? So I would know." Joan stepped onto the porch. The air had warmed, but the lake remained dark and restless. You already know the cottage needs work. How much? 1,200 on top of the roof? Yes. This is exactly what I was talking about. Then you can enjoy being right. I don't enjoy watching you burn through your savings to prove a point. I'm not proving a point. I'm replacing a pump. You could live comfortably here, with us, in the den. We can improve the den. Joan closed her eyes. How is work? The question changed the silence. Work is work, Daniel said. Are you still getting full hours? Why are you asking? You have left in the middle of the day 3 times this month. My schedule is flexible. Since when? Mom, don't turn this around. I'm asking about the budget, you say. Depends on me. We're fine. That isn't what Kendra says. Kendra's anxious. Kendra is many things. She isn't vague about money. Earl called from inside. Miss Mercer, turn on the kitchen tap. I have to go, Joan said. Wait. I'm working Saturday, but I could come Sunday and look at the pressure tank. Earl is looking at it. I'll still come. Bring the cedar chest. Daniel made a frustrated sound. I told you, we need a trailer. Then bring the key to the storage unit. Walt has a trailer. I don't want Walt hauling Dad's things. It is my chest. I know. Do you? Earl called again. Joan ended the conversation and turned on the faucet. Air burst through, followed by rusty water, and then a strong, clear stream. She put both hands under it. The water was shockingly cold. She laughed alone at the sink, while Earl watched from the doorway. Usually people wait for it to warm up, he said. Usually people have had water all day. The bill came to $1,220. The wiring had behaved. That evening Joan took a long shower at the cottage, though Rosa had offered hers. She washed her hair, put on clean pajamas, and ate Louise's rice with 2 fried eggs. The pleasure was so ordinary, it felt extravagant. A delivery truck arrived Thursday with the mattress Janice had recommended. The 2 adult men who carried it inside barely spoke, except to ask which way Joan wanted the head. When they removed the old mattress, a cloud of dust rose from beneath it, along with a fishing lure and 37 cents. Joan put the lure in Frank's tackle box and the coins in her blue dish. That night she slept without rolling toward the center of the bed. The weather softened. She learned which floorboard snapped near the kitchen and how far to turn the shower handle before the water became too hot. She bought hooks for the mudroom and hung her coat on the empty nail in the bedroom only once before deciding Frank's old nail should stay empty. Daniel did not come Sunday. At 11, he texted, "Something came up. Next weekend." Joan replied, "Bring the storage key." He did not answer. She ate lunch at Rosa's, helped Walt carry the hydrangea's discarded branches to the brush pile, and drove to the bait shop even though it was closed. Janice and Beth were inside counting inventory. They let her in, made coffee, and gave her 2 faded cushions for the porch chairs. Nobody asked whether she planned to sell. On Tuesday evening, Kendra called. Joan was chopping onions. "Hello? Can you talk?" "I can talk and chop. I'd rather have your full attention." Joan set down the knife. "All right. Daniel says he told you he was working Saturday." "He did. He didn't." Joan looked at the half-cut onion. "Was he sick?" "He hasn't had a Saturday shift since August. The cottage seemed to grow very quiet." "Kendra, he also told me you offered to keep paying half the $800 through winter." "I did not. I know that now." "What is happening? I can't do this over the phone." Joan heard a drawer slam on Kendra's end. "Where is Daniel?" she asked. "I don't know. He left." "Left for where?" "If I knew, I wouldn't say I didn't know." Kendra's voice cracked on the final word. She cleared her throat quickly. "Do you want me to call him?" Joan asked. "Yes." "No." Kendra breathed out. "This is exactly the problem. Every time he refuses to deal with something, one of us deals with it for him." The sentence was too accurate to reject. "I'll call him," Joan said. "Don't. He'll think I sent you." "Did you?" "No." Joan waited. Kendra said, "I have to go." The call ended. Joan tried Daniel anyway. It went to voicemail. She finished chopping the onion, though her hands had begun to shake. She made soup and forgot to add salt. At 10, she checked her phone. No messages from either of them. She slept lightly. The next afternoon brought a cold rain from the northeast. It struck the repaired roof, and Joan listened with grim satisfaction as the ceiling remained dry. Near 5, headlights moved through the trees. A dark SUV stopped beside the Buick. Kendra stepped out without an umbrella. Her tan coat was open, her hair wet almost immediately. She took a cardboard box from the back seat and carried it toward the porch. Joan opened the door. "What are you doing here?" Kendra set the box down inside. It held Joan's kitchen towels, 2 lamps, winter boots, and the ceramic bowl that had sat beside the phone. I brought the rest of your things. Where is Daniel? I told you. I don't know. That was yesterday. He came home. We argued. He left again. Water ran from Kendra's hair onto her coat collar. She looked exhausted, furious, and far younger than Joan was accustomed to seeing her. Come inside, Joan said. Kendra entered, then stopped beneath the warm light. Her eyes moved over the cream walls, the blue chair, the little mounted fish, and the embroidered tablecloth folded on the pine table. You painted, she said. Yes. It looks good. Thank you. Kendra gave a short, bitter laugh. Of course it does. Joan took 2 bowls from the cabinet. There's soup. I'm not hungry. You drove 90 miles in the rain. You're eating soup. For once, Kendra did not argue. She sat at the table while Joan reheated the pot. Rain streamed down the windows. The cottage held around them, small enough that neither woman could pretend to be elsewhere. When Joan placed the bowl in front of her, Kendra stared into it. Daniel told you this was my idea, didn't he? She asked. Joan remained standing. Kendra lifted her eyes. Moving you into the back room, she said. He let you believe I decided it. He said you needed the suite. I did need it. Kendra's voice hardened. And I moved your things. I'm not pretending I didn't. She gripped the spoon, but did not lift it. But the first person who said you should go into that den was your son. Joan sat across from her. Tell me exactly what he said. Kendra looked toward the window. Rainwater crawled down the glass, bending the reflection of the room. He said you weren't using the sunroom during the day. He said you spent most evenings with us anyway, and the den was warmer because it didn't have all those windows. The den is beside the garage. I know where it is. What else? Kendra stirred the soup. He said being surrounded by Frank's things was keeping you stuck. Joan stared at her. He said you'd mentioned wanting a smaller space, Kendra continued. Something simpler. He said if the room was already finished when you came back, you'd complain for a day and then admit it made sense. Did you believe him? I believed the part that was useful. The honesty landed harder than an excuse. Kendra lifted a spoonful of soup, then lowered it without eating. I knew you hadn't agreed. I knew we should call. I told myself Daniel understood you better than I did. You carried my bed. Yes. You packed my nightgown. Yes. You sent my husband's chest to storage. I did. Joan's voice dropped. Then don't come here hoping to hand all of this back to Daniel. I'm not. It sounds as if you are. I drove through 90 miles of rain to tell you I was wrong. You drove because you're angry at him. That too. Kendra pushed the bowl away. She had taken only 1 bite. Joan folded her hands in her lap, because she did not trust them to remain still on the table. Why didn't he ask me himself? You know why? I want to hear you say it. Because he was ashamed. Of moving me? Of everything. Kendra stood and went to the lake window. His hours were cut in August. Not a little. Some weeks he gets 24, some weeks 30. He's been using vacation time to make the checks look normal, but that's almost gone. Joan remembered Daniel in his work shirt, appearing at the cottage in the middle of the day. Long lunches, flexible schedule, Saturday shifts that did not exist. He told me work was fine. He tells everybody things are fine until they become somebody else's emergency. How far behind are you? We aren't behind. Yet. Kendra pressed her mouth into a line. Yet, she said. The heater clicked on. Warm air moved the corner of the tablecloth. Joan asked, was the business supposed to replace his income? It was supposed to help. And has it? No. The word came quickly without decoration. I have had consultations. I have staged 3 houses for agents. I made money on 1 and almost broke even on 2. Kendra turned from the window. The builder's project manager liked my portfolio. She also liked 4 other portfolios. I found that out yesterday. I'm sorry. Please stop saying that. It isn't an insult. I can't tell anymore. Joan understood that. She had reached a point where Daniel saying mom could mean love, impatience, or the opening move in a request. Kendra returned to the table. The mortgage went up when the rate adjusted. Daniel thought he would get his hours back before it mattered. Then he thought my meeting would fix it. Then you left and stopped the 800. I paid through this month. I know. That's the only reason we are not behind. So the plan was my money. The plan was all of it. His job, my business, your contribution, and the cottage. Kendra looked down. There it is, Joan said. It's worth more than you think. So is your house. Our house is where we live. Joan waited. Kendra closed her eyes. I heard it. Good. You could sell this place and still have money left after helping us. Helping you do what? Get through the winter. Give me time to build the business. Give Daniel time to find something steadier. And where do I live? With us. In the den. We can change the den. Joan laughed once. There was no humor in it. You keep offering me better walls around the same answer. What do you want me to say? That I'll give up the sunroom? Fine, I'll give it up. Will you? Kendra's face changed. If that gets you to come home, and when the mortgage is due, we'll figure it out. That is Daniel's phrase. I know. What happens when you look at that sunny room and remember it was the only place you ever felt serious about your work? What happens when you begin resenting every cup of coffee I make in it? Kendra's eyes filled, though no tears fell. At least I'm offering. You're offering because the cottage is worth more than the room. That isn't fair. No, Joan said. It isn't. Rain struck the roof in a sudden hard burst. Both women looked toward the bedroom ceiling. Nothing dripped. Kendra followed Joan's gaze. How much did the repair cost? 1,200 and change? And the pump? The same. Oh, Joan. There was genuine concern in her voice. It made Joan furious. Do not feel sorry for me because I spent my own money. I'm not feeling sorry for you. I'm saying this place will drain everything you have. The house on Beach Street needed a roof. The furnace failed twice. Frank backed into the garage door. Houses cost money. You had Daniel there. I had Frank there, and I handled the bills. Kendra rubbed a thumb beneath one eye. You make people feel useless. The words came so quietly that Joan almost missed them. What? You do everything before anyone asks. You cook, clean, pay, remind, fix. Then when something goes wrong, you have a whole list in your head of what you did for everybody. I never kept a list. You didn't need paper. Joan felt the accusation find places she would rather it had not found. She thought of folding Kendra's laundry because it had sat in the dryer for 20 minutes, correcting Daniel's grocery choices, refilling cabinets according to an order no one else understood. I was helping, she said. I know. That's what makes it hard to complain. Then perhaps moving my furniture was your complaint. Kendra winced. Maybe part of it. Joan let the answer remain between them. It did not excuse anything. It also refused to fit neatly inside anger. Eat your soup, she said. Kendra pulled the bowl back and took a spoonful. Needs salt. I forgot it. You never forget salt. I had a difficult evening. Kendra rose, found the salt without asking, and set it between them. Joan watched her sprinkle too much into the bowl, taste it, and pretend she had not. What do you want me to do? Joan asked. Call Daniel? No. He listens to you. No, he waits for me to make unpleasant things softer, then tell him to come home. You tell him. He won't answer. Neither will I. Kendra put down the spoon. So that's it? For tonight, yes. You're his mother. And you're his wife. Neither title makes us responsible for locating a 44-year-old man who drove away from a conversation. Kendra stared at her. You really have changed. I moved some furniture. A laugh escaped Kendra before she could stop it. She covered her mouth, and the laugh turned into a sob. Joan remained seated. Every practice part of her wanted to cross the table, put an arm around Kendra, and say they would find a way. She knew exactly how to do it. She could have made tea, called Daniel, offered enough money to get them through 2 months, and turned the sharp problem into a dull one everyone could survive without changing. Instead, she slid the box of tissues across the table. Kendra took one. I hate you a little right now, she said. I understand. You could at least look offended. I'm tired. They sat until the soup cooled. Daniel called at 7:40. Joan answered on the second ring. Is Kendra there? Yes. Why? She brought my things. She took off without telling me. Joan looked at Kendra, who mouthed, He walked out first. You left first, Joan said. That isn't the point. It rarely is. Put her on. She has her phone. She isn't answering. Then, perhaps she doesn't want to speak to you. Kendra shook her head and pointed toward the phone. Tell him to come here. Joan almost smiled at the reversal. Kendra says to come here. There was a long pause. I'm not driving all the way up there so you two can corner me. We aren't on the same side. Kendra wiped her eyes. Tell him that's the first true thing anyone said today. Joan repeated it. Daniel exhaled. I'll come get her. No, Joan said. Come talk. I'm not doing some family meeting at Dad's cottage. It is my cottage. Another silence. I'll be there in an hour and a half, he said. Kendra took her coat into the bedroom and hung it on the empty nail. Water dripped from the hem onto the floor. Joan noticed but said nothing. They washed the soup bowls together. Kendra dried them and placed one in the wrong cabinet. Joan moved it, then caught Kendra watching. Sorry, Joan said. I was waiting to see how long you could stand it. 6 seconds. Better than before. Headlights finally moved through the trees. Daniel parked behind Kendra's SUV and sat in his truck with the engine running. Neither woman went outside. When he came in, his hair was wet and his face flushed from the cold. He looked from Kendra to Joan, then at the painted walls. This place looks different, he said. So do you, Joan replied. I drove 90 miles. Can we skip whatever speech you prepared? I didn't prepare one. Kendra leaned against the counter. Tell her about August. Daniel's jaw tightened. You already did. She knows about the hours. She doesn't know the rest. There is no rest. You told me Joan wanted a smaller room. I said she might be more comfortable. You said she complained the sunroom made her think about Frank. Daniel looked at his mother. You did. I said the first night was difficult, Joan said. His side of the bed was empty. You said maybe a different room would be easier. Someday. I did not mean the laundry room while I was in Madison. I was trying to solve 2 problems. No, Joan said. You were trying to solve your mortgage. Daniel walked to the window. You think I enjoyed any of this? I don't know. You arranged for me to blame your wife. Kendra folded her arms. That part worked beautifully. I didn't arrange anything. You stood in the garage while I loaded the chest, Kendra said. Then you told me to have the room done before Sunday because she'd be less likely to fight once it was finished. Joan felt the back room again. The portable rack, the folded nightgown, the lavender candle. Daniel's shoulders lowered. Mom, he said, I'm sorry. The words were real. They were also far too small. Joan pulled out a chair and sat. You will not sell this cottage, she said. You will not ask me to pay your mortgage. You will not send Kendra to ask because you're ashamed. Daniel turned. Then, what do you expect us to do? The same thing you expected me to do. What does that mean? Live somewhere you can afford. His face went pale. Kendra looked down at the counter. Daniel said, we may lose the house. No, Joan said. You may have to sell it. The rain softened outside, but nobody mistook the quiet for peace. Daniel remained by the window. You make it sound easy, he said. I didn't say easy. Sell the house. Move somewhere cheaper. Just like that. You suggested I sell this place after less than 2 weeks. That is different. Because you don't live here? Because you have choices. So do you. Kendra pulled out the chair beside Joan and sat. She's right. Daniel turned. Of course she is. You drove up here and made sure she had every ugly detail before I could explain. What were you going to explain? That your vacation hours were magically rebuilding themselves? I was handling it. You were leaving the house every morning with a lunch bag. Joan looked at him. Where did you go? Daniel's face darkened. It doesn't matter. It matters to me. Sometimes the diner, sometimes I drove around. Once I went to a movie because it was $6 and warm. The image hurt more than Joan expected. Her adult son alone in a dark theater on a weekday morning, hiding from 2 women who thought he was at work. Why didn't you tell me? She asked. What would you have done? I don't know. Yes, you do. You would have offered money. Then every time I spent $5, I'd wonder whether you thought I was wasting yours. Joan wanted to deny it. She could not. Kendra said, you took her money anyway. That was the arrangement before my hours changed. And after they changed, that you built the whole plan around it. I was trying not to panic. You were trying to make sure you were the last person who had to feel the panic. Daniel looked toward the door. For a moment, Joan thought he might leave again. Sit down, she said. I've been sitting in a truck half my life. Then you're experienced. He gave her an exhausted look, but took the remaining chair. The 3 of them sat around the tablecloth Kendra had wanted for her meeting. Its blue flowers showed between their hands. Joan said, I put $65,000 into your house because the suite was supposed to be my home. Daniel rubbed his palms over his jeans. I know. No, you know the number. I don't think you know what it was. It was from Beach Street. It was the part I kept after paying off what remained on Beach Street, moving and putting money aside for myself. It was the room where I expected to grow old. Kendra stared at the table. I gave it to you because I trusted you, Joan continued. I didn't ask for my name on anything. I didn't set conditions. Perhaps that was foolish. You told us it was a gift, Daniel said. It was. Then you can't turn around and... I am not taking you to court, Daniel. He stopped. I am telling you that something can be a gift and still carry a responsibility. You took the money, built the room, and then decided my place and it was temporary. If you sell the house, you need to decide what you owe me. What do you want? Kendra asked. Joan looked around the cottage. Fresh paint, repaired roof, new pump, a home being rebuilt with checks she could feel leaving her account. I want the cedar chest returned, she said. I want the rest of my belongings, and I want some portion of that money back after the sale. How much? I don't know yet. Daniel leaned back. That's convenient. I could say 65,000. We don't have 65,000. I know. We may not make much after the mortgage and selling costs. Then I will see what your apology is worth when it has to compete with inconvenience. Mom? No. You want me to name a number so you can argue it down like a roof repair. I want you to look at what remains and decide whether I mattered in that house. Daniel's face tightened. That's a terrible thing to put on me. So was the back room. Kendra covered her mouth with one hand. Joan could not tell whether she was hiding tears or agreement. Daniel stood again. You both have this arranged perfectly. I'm the liar, Kendra's the hard-working victim, and you're the widow who finally stood up for herself. I am not a victim, Kendra said. I didn't say you were. You just did. And you moved her. I know. You wanted the room. I know. Then stop acting like I carried the bed by myself. Kendra rose so fast her chair scraped the floor. I have not denied one thing I did. You have denied everything until someone brings you evidence and then you call it shame. Joan stood between them, not physically, but with her voice. Stop. They did. You are not going to use my kitchen to rehearse the fight you refuse to have at home, she said. I will not decide which of you is more wrong. I will not tell Daniel to forgive Kendra or Kendra to trust Daniel. I will not lend you money so you can postpone speaking honestly for another month. Daniel looked at the cream walls as though searching for the mother who had once occupied darker rooms. What will you do? He asked. I'll make more soup if anyone is still hungry. No one was. Kendra put on her damp coat. Daniel reached for her sleeve, but she stepped away. Are you coming home? He asked. Yes. Can we drive together? My car is here. I know. Leave it. We'll get it later. Kendra glanced at Joan. Is that what you want? Joan understood that she was being asked to make the first decision in their marriage after announcing she would make none. You have 2 cars and 1 destination, she said. I trust you to solve it. Kendra almost smiled. They left separately. Daniel's truck followed Kendra's SUV through the trees, its headlights washing briefly across the cottage before the road went dark. Joan locked the door. The room still held 3 bowls, 3 glasses, and a damp spot beneath the nail where Kendra's coat had hung. Joan put the bowls in the sink but did not wash them. She sat in the blue chair and listened to the rain. She had expected truth to bring relief. Instead, it spread pain more accurately. Kendra had moved her. Daniel had suggested it. Joan had made herself so relentlessly useful that both of them had learned to experience her help as part of the house, like hot water or electricity, noticed mainly when it stopped. None of those truths canceled the others. Rosa found her the next morning carrying the bowls across the road. My pump works, Joan said. I don't need your sink. You have the face again. I may always have the face now. Rosa took the bowls and set them on her counter. Did you give them money? No. Good. I told them to sell their house. Rosa paused. Did they ask? No. Then you are still giving things no one asked for. Now it's advice. Joan frowned. They cannot afford it. I believe you. Doesn't make it less theirs to decide. Joan took off her coat and hung it on Rosa's chair. You could have agreed with me for 1 full minute. I agreed about the money. Rosa filled the sink. Did you tell them you were frightened? Of what? Of spending your savings? Of winter? Of losing Daniel? I'm not losing Daniel. Rosa handed her a dish towel. Then why do you look bereaved? Joan dried the first bowl more carefully than necessary. She did not call Daniel that day. He did not call her. Cold settled over the lake. The last leaves dropped from the maples, exposing houses that had been hidden along the opposite shore. Joan hired someone to service the chimney. She paid to have the propane tank filled. Walt helped her attach foam covers to the outside faucets, but made her do one herself so she would know how. "You turn it left," he said. "I have encountered screws. Frank always turned these right." Frank broke many things with confidence. At the grocery store, Joan began recognizing people. The cashier with purple glasses asked whether the roof had held. Earl waved from the hardware aisle without approaching, which Joan considered an improvement in Lake manners. The cottage did not become easy. It became familiar. Daniel called 6 days after the confrontation. "We met with someone about the house," he said. Joan sat at the table, sorting mail. "All right, he thinks we should list before the holidays." "What do you think?" "I think he's a real estate agent. He thinks everyone should list." Despite herself, Joan smiled. "That sounds likely. Kendra thinks we should do it? And you?" A long breath traveled through the phone. "I think I don't want strangers walking through my bedroom deciding whether the closet is large enough." I remember. The house on Beach Street had been on the market for 12 days. Joan had wiped counters before every showing, then sat in parking lots with Frank while strangers evaluated the rooms where Daniel had grown up. "Are you angry?" he asked. "That you're listing?" "At all of it." "Yes. Are you going to stay angry?" "I don't know. That's not like you." "No?" Daniel was silent. Joan looked at the blue paint flowers on the tablecloth. "Did you tell Kendra that putting me in the back room was your idea because you thought I would forgive you faster?" "Yes." The answer came quietly. "Were you right?" "I thought so." "So did I." "I'm sorry." She let the apology stand without rescuing him from how small it sounded. Daniel continued. "We'll bring the chest this weekend." "With a trailer?" Kendra found one. "Good. We're also going through Dad's garage boxes. Some are yours. Don't throw anything away until I see it. We won't." Joan heard Kendra speaking in the background. Then Daniel said, "She wants to know if you'll come Saturday and help decide what goes." Joan almost said yes automatically. She pictured the garage full of Frank's tools, medical supplies, old coats, and objects Daniel had avoided touching for nearly a year. She pictured herself sorting every box while they prepared the house for sale, turning their difficult work into another task she could complete before they felt it. "I'll come choose what is mine," she said. "I won't clean the garage. That's fair." The words surprised her. On Saturday, the house smelled of cardboard and furniture polish. Small white tags marked walls where Kendra planned to remove pictures. The sunroom had been simplified for photographs. One chair, one table, no fabric samples. It looked less like Kendra's showroom and more like the suite Joan had been promised, stripped of both women. Daniel met her in the garage. He had arranged Frank's boxes in 2 rows and labeled them Keep, Donate, and Unsure. "You labeled an empty row?" Joan asked. "I was trying to prepare." "You have always loved office supplies." He smiled nervously. They worked side by side. Joan kept Frank's hand tools, his red thermos, and a wool blanket from the truck. Daniel kept the fishing knife his father had taught him to sharpen. They donated 3 coats, 2 tackle organizers, and a portable radio that only received 1 station. When Joan reached for a box of extension cords, Daniel took the other end without assuming she could not lift it. At noon, Kendra appeared in the garage with sandwiches. She wore old jeans and no makeup. Her eyes were tired but steady. "The trailer's around back," she said. Joan looked past her. Frank's cedar chest stood in the driveway, already secured beneath a gray moving blanket. For the first time since leaving, Joan could see a piece of her old life waiting to be carried toward the new one. Kendra handed her a sandwich. "We accepted an offer this morning," she said. "The house is selling." Joan looked from Kendra to Daniel. That was fast. "Someone who came through yesterday," Kendra said. "They liked the ground floor suite." Of course they did. For one dangerous second, Joan wanted to laugh. Not because losing the house was funny, but because the room had changed purpose again so easily. Her last room had become Kendra's showroom, and now it was a selling feature for strangers. "Is it a fair offer?" she asked. Daniel nodded. "Lower than we wanted. Offers generally are." "But enough," Kendra said. "If the inspection doesn't uncover anything awful." Daniel looked at the rows of boxes. "It means we have to move in 5 weeks." He sounded dazed. Joan knew that feeling. A house could remain wooden drywall for years, then become memory the moment someone else offered money for it. "Have you found somewhere?" she asked. "We looked at 2 townhouses," Kendra said. "There's one near Mason Avenue, 2 bedrooms, small garage, sunroom." Kendra met Joan's eyes. No. Joan regretted the question, though Kendra did not look wounded. There's a commercial studio downtown that rents desks and meeting space by the day, Kendra continued. If I actually have a client, I'll book a room. If I don't, I won't pretend I need one. That sounds sensible. It sounds humiliating. It can be both. Kendra gave a tired smile. I suppose you would know. Daniel began shifting boxes toward the garage door. We should get the trailer loaded before the rain starts again. Frank's cedar chest was heavier than Joan remembered. Daniel and Kendra lifted one end while Joan guided from the side, more witness than help. They slid it farther onto the trailer and tightened the straps over the moving blanket. Kendra checked each buckle twice. I didn't damage it, she said. I didn't think you did. You thought I might. I thought you should not have moved it. Kendra nodded. You were right. No defense followed. Daniel drove the truck. Joan followed in the Buick, watching the gray-covered shape of the chest through his trailer rails. Kendra came behind in her SUV. The three vehicles traveled north like a small, poorly organized procession. At the cottage, Walt appeared with a handcart before anyone called him. Rosa stood on her porch giving instructions nobody had requested. Watch the left wheel, she shouted. That step is soft. It was replaced, Joan called back. Then watch the new step. New things break too. They brought the chest inside and stopped in the main room. Where do you want it? Daniel asked. Joan had imagined it at the foot of the bed, where it would leave only a narrow path to the bathroom. Beneath the bedroom window, it would block the heat register. The cottage did not care that the chest was valuable or sentimental. It required an actual decision. Along that wall, she said, pointing to the space beneath the little mounted bluegill. They set it down. The dark cedar looked almost formal against the cream paint. Kendra removed the blanket and ran one hand across the lid. I'm sorry. Joan waited. I'm sorry I moved you as if you were part of the furniture. Kendra's voice was steady, though she kept her eyes on the chest. I'm sorry I decided wanting the room badly enough meant I didn't have to ask. And I'm sorry I put this in storage. There was no mention of Daniel, the mortgage, the business, or stress. Thank you, Joan said. Kendra finally looked at her. She seemed to expect either forgiveness or punishment, and did not receive enough of either to be certain. I don't know what happens with us now, Joan said. But thank you. That's fair. Daniel stood beside the empty handcart. I'm sorry too. I know. I don't think you do. Joan looked at him. He swallowed. I knew you would blame Kendra first. I let you because I thought it would be easier to fix things with you than with her. For whom? For me. It was the first answer he had given that did not try to hide inside practicality. Joan touched the cedar lid. Then, you have work to do, with both of us. Yes. Walt cleared his throat. I can pretend to inspect the porch if this is private. It was private before you cleared your throat, Rosa called from across the yard. Kendra laughed unexpectedly. Daniel shook his head. Joan opened the chest. The cedar smell rose at once, sharp and clean. Inside were the wool blankets she expected, Frank's navy wedding suit, 2 unfinished quilts, and a small cardboard box of Christmas ornaments. Nothing had been rearranged. She closed the lid. Coffee? She asked. Daniel looked almost relieved. Kendra and I should get back, he said. There's packing. Then no. Joan did not prepare sandwiches for the road. The sale survived its inspection. Daniel called twice to complain about the buyer's request for a credit toward the aging furnace. Joan listened but did not negotiate for him. Kendra booked the townhouse on Mason Avenue and sold the cream sofa from the sunroom because it would not fit. They packed their house themselves. Joan returned once for the last of her belongings and took only what was hers. When Daniel asked whether she could help wrap the dining glasses, she said no. The word no longer felt foreign, though it still carried an accent. On moving day, she brought coffee and 3 deli sandwiches. She did not bring tape, markers, boxes, cleaning supplies, or a plan. Kendra accepted the bag. You came without taking over. I'm trying something new. It's unsettling, for both of us. The townhouse had beige walls, narrow stairs, and a kitchen that allowed 2 people only if neither opened the refrigerator. Daniel complained about the garage. Kendra complained about the light in the second bedroom. Then they stopped complaining in front of Joan, perhaps because they recognized the rooms were listening. Kendra stored her samples in 2 metal cabinets and rented studio space only when someone paid for a consultation. She did not become an immediate success. Some weeks she worked constantly and earned almost nothing. Other weeks, a staging job covered the townhouse rent. The uncertainty made her more careful and less grand about what the business was becoming. Daniel applied for full-time positions instead of waiting for his old hours to return. He accepted a job at a smaller building supply yard for less per hour, but a steady schedule. He disliked beginning again under a manager younger than he was. Joan knew because he told her, not because Kendra did. 6 weeks after the house closed, Daniel and Kendra came to the cottage together. Daniel placed an envelope on the pine table. Joan did not touch it. "What is this?" $30,000. She looked at him. "From the sale," Kendra said. "After the mortgage, fees, moving, and what we needed for the townhouse. You need savings." "We kept some," Daniel said. "Not enough." "Probably not." Joan pushed the envelope toward him. "I gave you that money. You gave us money for a home," he said. "Then we took away your room. This doesn't undo that." "I know. What if your car fails? I'll handle it. What if Kendra has a slow month?" "We'll handle it," Kendra said. The phrase sounded different in her voice now. Not like a promise that Joan would eventually be asked to make good, like a boundary facing the other direction. Daniel rested his hand on the envelope. "It isn't all 65. I know. We can't return all of it. I know that too. We decided 30 was fair." Joan almost asked who had suggested the number, how much remained in their account, whether Daniel's new insurance cost more. The questions crowded behind her teeth. She put the envelope in the cedar chest. "All right," she said. The money replaced what the heater, pump, roof patch, mattress, and winter preparations had taken from her savings. In spring, Peterson's crew returned and stripped the old shingles to the decking. Joan paid for the new roof without imagining Daniel's mortgage each time she wrote a check. Winter made the cottage smaller. Snow erased the road edges and piled against the porch. The lake froze in layers, groaning at night like a distant door. Joan learned to keep an extra week of food, a flashlight beside the bed, and dry wood stacked inside before storms. There were evenings when independence felt less like freedom than an empty chair. On those nights, she sometimes opened the cedar chest and touched Frank's suit sleeve. She missed his voice, his coffee spills, and the infuriating confidence with which he left jobs unfinished. She also remembered his weight against her shoulder during the final months and the way every room had narrowed around his illness. Missing him did not require her to pretend he had been easy. Rosa came on Thursdays unless the road was bad. Walt came when invited, and occasionally when Rosa invited him on Joan's behalf. Janice, Beth, and Louise joined often enough that the pine table acquired permanent wine rings despite the good tablecloth. They called the meals Thursday supper. No one called them a tradition until Joan realized she had begun buying ingredients on Wednesdays. Daniel visited every few weeks. At first he arrived with tools and looked for something to repair. Joan made him sit for coffee before he touched anything. He learned to ask. In April, he stood on the porch and pressed one boot against the rail. "This should be replaced, I know." "Do you want me to do it?" "Yes." He came back the following Saturday. They rebuilt the rail and replaced another soft step. Daniel measured twice, cut one board too short anyway, and swore with such perfect imitation of Frank that Joan had to sit down laughing. He did not use the work as an apology. He had already apologized. He simply returned the next week to finish. Kendra came less often. The distance between her and Joan remained, but it became honest distance instead of forced closeness. She called before visiting. Once she suggested new curtains for the lake window, then stopped herself. "You don't have to look like that," Joan said. "You can have an opinion. The green linen would work. I hate linen curtains." Then I've contributed. By summer, the cottage still had sloping floors, a cramped kitchen, and a bathroom door that would not stay open. It also had a sound roof, strong water pressure, cream walls, and a new porch rail Daniel had made slightly too high. Near the anniversary of Joan's move, she planned a Saturday supper by the lake. Rosa brought rice in an amount suitable for a wedding. Beth and Janice arrived with fish they admitted someone else had caught. Louise brought apple pie. Walt carried folding chairs to the shore and did not mention that Frank used to arrange them differently. Kendra came with salad and no decorating advice. Daniel arrived last. Joan was inside filling a pitcher when she heard his truck. Through the screen, she watched him cross the yard carrying a bag of ice. He climbed the porch steps, reached for the door, and stopped. The screen was unlatched. For most of his life, that would have been enough. He stood outside and knocked. Joan looked past him at the long table near the water, at Rosa arguing with Walt, at Kendra laughing while the wind lifted her hair. The cottage behind Joan smelled of cedar, coffee, and the pie warming in the oven. Daniel waited. Joan crossed the room she had chosen, opened the door, and invited her son inside.